Coming up on episode 339 of Wheel Bearings, we got the Toyota Crown, the McLaren 750S, Dodge Hornet, VW ID.7, an update on Jeep's status, the first drives of the Honda Prologue and the Ram 1500 for 2025, the Ineos Fusilier EV, US-built EV9s and tax credits, and all that and more, including a bunch of listener questions. This is episode 339 of Wheel Bearings. I am Sam Abul-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
And I'm Nicole Wakeland from The Road Reflected.
And I am Roberto Baldo from SAE International.
And let's see. Let's start with Robbie. You drove something interesting this week.
I did drive something interesting. I drove the brand new McLaren 750S.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know. So you might remember back in 2017, the McLaren 720S came out, and everyone
Was it that
loved
long ago?
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
I remember driving it. I'm like, that wasn't 2000. It was probably 2018 when I drove it. It might have been 2017. Either way, wow. That was a long time ago. So I drove the brand new McLaren 750S. They did a lot of fancy things to this vehicle. They reduced the weight. They a lot of things. So like for example, the seats, each seat, like the little, the racing seats, the Senna seats, they're about 38.6 pounds lighter. Each.
That's actually a lot of weight on a vehicle like that. Yeah.
Each. That's like 80 pounds.
What were they made of before? Did they have like gold bars tucked underneath there or something?
I don't know.
How do you cut that much weight out of the seats? Wow.
Magic. Well, here's the thing. So I talk to McLaren whenever I have a chance to drive their car, because they are just the nerdiest of the nerds when it comes to building a car. And I talked to the president of Americas and the lead engineer, and both of them, I was like, so what happens? Do you try to, while you're working on this, where do you stop? At what point do you say, okay, we need to stop? And they're like, that's really difficult because we're all super passionate, and you'll just have people just wait, we can do a little bit here. Oh wait, we can do a little bit here. Oh, we can save 4 pounds here. Let's save 4 pounds on the exhaust. Let's save 30 pounds on the wheels. Let's save let's make the rear wing 20% larger so you have more downforce and more stopping force, but also let's make it lighter. Those are all the crazy things that they're doing over there at McLaren to make that vehicle super quick. It has a twin turbo V8, and of course it's a mid-engine rear-wheel drive because it's McLaren and you want to be cool. It is fantastic. That's all I'm gonna.
No, come on, don't hold back. Tell us what you really think.
Yeah,
I really like this vehicle, and at one point it's. They're both under three. So there's two versions. Oh gosh, I didn't even say this. There's a coupe or a coupe and a spider. And the spider has a retractable hood or a roof.
Mm-hmm.
But it only
has a retractable hood.
Has a retractable hood.
I mean, if you're speaking British, then it's a hood. It's not.
I guess.
I've been hanging out with British people. It has a retractable roof. And typically when you do that means you're going to add hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds of mechanicals and whatnot and braces and all this stuff to make it so that people can drive around with the wind in their hair and the sun in their eyes and sunscreen in their glove compartment. 113 pounds more between the two cars. That's the difference in weight.
It's not bad. I mean, that's pretty modest.
Yeah, that's.
I guess that's what happens when you make the whole thing out of carbon fiber.
Ding, ding, ding. Exactly. We don't really have to do a lot of torsion, the flexibility. What happens when you create a convertible is that you remove something that reduces flex what happens when you make a convertible. You're taking pieces of metal or plastic or glass. I hope no one has a plastic roof, but maybe carbon fiber. But you're taking that off the vehicle. So now when it turns and when it's doing things, there's a little bit of you get a little bit more chassis rotation. Well, because everything is carbon fiber, essentially, they have this carbon fiber like bathtub that you're sitting in. They're like, yeah, we didn't really have to do anything.
Of course, there is one ever so slight downside to using carbon fiber.
What might that be?
It's not inexpensive.
It is not cheap. No. Well, I mean, if you're looking at a McLaren, you're not,
Yeah.
If you're cross shopping a McLaren with, I don't know, a house, like, ooh, second house McLaren.
Or in my case, first house McLaren. First house McLaren.
Any house McLaren.
Yeah, it has instead of using a hydraulic system for the roof because it's too loud, they used eight little motors that move it back. It'll work up to like 30 miles an hour. All that is just a fancy way of me saying that I love convertibles. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you live. At some point in your life, my life philosophy is that you should own a convertible, even if it's for a few months.
I totally concur.
Just even for a few months of your life, just own a convertible. Drive around. You can see everywhere. Right? You can, it's the best. I've owned 2 convertibles in my life. I'm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's, I guess, but
I live in New Hampshire. I use it for 20 minutes.
I mean, where does Sam live?
Miata in Michigan, so I don't have much of a leg to stand on.
Yeah, I'm like, where does Sam live again?
Yeah, I mean, the sun is shining today. It's supposed to hit 50 degrees this afternoon. So after we're done recording, I am planning on taking out the Miata.
Bam.
I have it was 12 here for some absurd reason in New Hampshire because that is cold for the end of February.
It was 22 when I took the dogs out for a walk this morning, but it is supposed to hit 50 this afternoon.
We're supposed to get to 40. I'm just looking at my watch. We're whopping 40 degrees right now.
Well, 40 degrees, that's good enough. That's good enough. That's warm enough for summer tires.
30 right now though.
Summer
tires.
Any
TJ would say.
Any car, with a heater can keep you reasonably warm at 40 degrees ambient temperature. You're good enough. Just put on an extra layer, put on some gloves and a hat. It's good.
Boom. I've done that before.
Yeah.
I've done. I have actually. I did at some point. I had to. There was what's the Lexus? The fancy Lexus. It's the convertible.
The SC.
Yes, I got that, and it was up for voting for something, and they said, "Do you want it?" I said, "You guys, it's January." They said, "Do you want it for a weekend?" So I have pictures of myself in my winter coat, winter gloves, winter hat, snowbanks that are taller than the car. I'm driving it. I'm like, "Bring it!"
Yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you have to take advantage of these opportunities.
Exactly.
Yes. When they come, you have to take advantage of them. So
the price differential between the coupe and the Spider is, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, relatively speaking, isn't that much. And most of their orders
How grand
right now
is the scheme?
So the starting price, the total recommended MSRP. This includes transportation and transportation and port processing charges. That's what McLaren calls them. $331,740. That's the coupe. For the Spider, $352,740. So it's only like $19,000 more.
So I could get either one of those for slightly less than the current Zillow estimate of the value of my home.
Yeah. Yeah. It really comes down to what kind of life do you want to live, Sam?
What kind of life do you want to live?
It depends. If
you want to be comfortable or do you want to have fun?
I'll go with fun.
All right.
I feel like asking what your wife wants.
No, just make a decision. That's always worked out for every man ever.
What could possibly go wrong?
So we had an opportunity to drive this thing in the Valley of Fire in Nevada near Las Vegas. We drove it around. Outstanding. I drove the Spider. And then they took us to Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We had to drive it we drove the coupe on the track. And it was. Yeah, it's something. Let me tell you, it's so light and nimble. It's like, so at one point, as I was coming out of a corner, it reminded me of a motorcycle, just for really? Oh wow, just the lightness and the power and the power to weight ratio, just like everything felt just like oh wow. So it is a force to be reckoned with for those who are big McLaren fans. I did get 16 miles per gallon while driving around.
Woohoo!
At some point,
they're not shabby.
That's not.
Their combined is 17. I got stuck up behind a lot of people while driving around, and I stopped a lot, and So it's so fast. Oh my gosh. 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds. Both vehicles. It feels like an EV. It has that instant go of an EV because it doesn't weigh anything. You get the twin turbos, you get the V8, you get all that displacement plus some turbos, and it just and under 3,000 pounds, and it just goes. So it has that nearly instant acceleration of an EV, which is sort of weird because after you drive EVs for a while, then you drive a gas car, and it doesn't matter which one you drive, supercar, regular car, sports car. When you put your foot on the gas, there's that little there's that beat. There's a beat before you go, and EVs are just like go.
Yeah. Well, I just pulled up the curb weight on the 750S and it shows that it's 3,062 to 3,170 pounds. So that is like a full ton less than the vehicle I'm going to talk about later.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, a ton.
And it has a lot more power than that vehicle.
Yeah. So it's a I don't, if you're listening to the podcast and you can afford a McLaren, well, first of all, you should be a Patreon supporter. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. Nicely done, Robbie.
I'm just saying that. That's all I'm saying. But no, I really enjoy this vehicle. I don't want to say it's my favorite supercar because they're all a little different. They all have something special.
You can't pick a favorite child. You can't pick
a favorite child. But the Spider, I had headroom and legroom. That just makes me happy. That's one of my issues with the Lamborghinis is if I get in a Lamborghini Spider, I'm like essentially looking at the top of the windshield.
The windshield header.
Yeah. So anyway, so the McLaren 750S, a lot of power, really quick, weighs like about as much as your first bicycle, a 10-speed from the 80s. You should, if you're again billionaire, go out and buy one, and also just give us some money.
All right, Nicole.
Yes.
What did you have?
I had a couple of things. So I had what I'm driving that is still sitting in my drive right now is the Dodge Hornet, which I love, but I actually really hate. I like this car, but I hate Hornets. I and every time I see a little, I'm like,
so it's not the Dodge
bug.
Hornet you hate, but you hate the flying Hornets.
The flying Hornets, and so you got. I don't like saying I'm in a Hornet. I don't like the name of this particular.
What's the difference between a Hornet and a Wasp? Hold on, you guys keep talking.
There's a lot of different kinds of wasps.
I'm not Googling that because I don't want to look at them, gentlemen.
There's a lot of varieties of hornets and wasps.
You know what? They all are. They're all little angry mothers who just.
No, they're not. That is actually not true.
No, honeybees are not angry. Hornets and wasps are
not all
honeybees
wasps.
Are nice.
No, there are a number of wasps that are actually very docile. And as long as
every wasp I've ever seen has I'm sitting halfway across a parking lot.
They look angry.
And he's like, "Oh, I'm coming for you, woman!" And they come after me. I don't like flying sticky.
Like the most common ones that people know of, are the yellow and black.
The yellow
wasps.
That's like a yellow.
Well, there's actually two that look virtually identical. One is the yellow jacket.
I know this, but okay, go ahead.
One is the yellow jacket. The other one is the paper wasp. They're very they're almost impossible to tell apart visually. Okay. One way you can tell them apart is if you see it fly into a hole in the ground, a burrow in the ground, that's a yellow jacket. Those you do not want to mess with. They're mean. They're angry. They're aggressive. Paper wasps, on the other hand, they're the ones that make those big nests that hang from your eaves or in the trees. Yeah. Or underneath the lid of your grill. But they are actually very docile. And I have stood in the middle of a swarm of paper wasps. No problem at all.
No, we had paper wasps. If you don't open your umbrella on your deck fast enough every year, if you say leave it closed for a week or so, wasps think that's a great place to live.
Oh, I know. Yeah. They want shady spots.
I opened it up and I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, I'm out. And they were all angry. So no.
Well, you destroyed their home.
I didn't. It was still up there. I had to call a man to destroy their home because I was afraid.
Paper wasps are actually really important as pollinators. They're great pollinators, just like bees.
All these creatures, as long as they're far away from me.
So, all hornets are wasp, but not all wasps. So anyway, a hornet's a wasp.
Yeah, okay. So it's one of the many varieties of wasp.
Okay,
there you go. That's all.
There's also these little green wasps that are also very, very, they're harmless, but
No.
they're actually really good predators. They're great
No.
they're great for doing pest control in your garden. You want to have those around
I
because
do not want any of them around, Sam. I don't care how nice they are to you.
Okay.
I want none of them around, but I will
All
take
right.
the one that's parked in my driveway. So I have the Dodge Hornet. It came out last year, and it's for anyone who doesn't know what this is, because weirdly, I feel like nobody knows this car exists based on my experiences this week. It's a crossover from Dodge, and it's sort of like expanding them into everybody has a crossover. Why don't we? So they had one.
Word.
I took two different people that like are in a wide variety of cars I drive and know a little bit about cars. Both of them huge Dodge fans. One is on their third Charger. The other one has had two Challengers and a Charger. Neither of them even knew that the Hornet exists. They're like, what's this Dodge?
Wow.
They saw the Dodge logo when they sat down next to me.
If no one knows it exists, they should just bring the Magnum back. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. So it was like, hey, everybody, this is a Dodge. It's a crossover. So it's available as a plug-in hybrid or it's available as a gas vehicle. The gas kind of came out first. They both technically, I think, were last year, but I feel like the hybrid was sort of late delivery. So I have the hybrid. It gives you about 30 miles ish of all electric range. And it comes with standard all-wheel drive and about 288 horsepower. And you can get extra. So if let me get this right, you put it in sport mode and you pull both paddle shifters, I think it is. I'm trying to remember then you get an extra 30 boosts. Like, boom, you get extra horsepower for a little bit.
Boom.
Boom. But like, okay, if you
It'll sting you.
Yeah, stop.
Hey.
So you get a little extra boost, I guess, if you wanted to just have fun with it, or maybe you need to pass someone and you really need an aggressive amount of power, like to get around somebody in traffic. Sure, that will work. But it's not something you're just going to sit in that all the time. So basically 288 horsepower. There's two trims in this, the RT and RT Plus, and the RT Plus gets some extra, just looks prettier. It's not like horsepower wise. I don't think there's a difference. But you get, for the base, 41.4, for the RT Plus, 46.4. So it's not outrageously expensive, but again, it's not especially cheap. It has a nice interior. I really like that it has, and I think this is a package on the version that I have. It has black Alcantara seats, but it's like they're perforated. So they're like, almost imagine two thin layers together, and one is black and one is red. The red's on the bottom. So in the perforations, it's red. So it's like little red dots. So it gives this nice visual, sporty, fun contrast when you open the door. And they're comfortable. They're sort of heavily bolstered because it's supposed to be a fun little sporty little Dodge. And it is. I mean, it fills that. It does that. It's comfortable. There's plenty of room. Russ has been in front at his 6-foot self. My daughter's been sitting behind him, and it hasn't been squished. Not super roomy. I mean, this is still crossover size.
Compact crossover.
Right. So two people in back, absolutely 100% no problem. Three in back, short trips. You don't want to do three for longer trips. And I liked it. It has kind of lowish on cargo room, I would say, compared to the segment. It's only about 22.9 behind the rear seats. The wheel seats. There's also a 10.25-inch infotainment screen and a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster. So it has some nice little amenities to it. I like this overall. Here's my one weird thing. And I don't know that it was broken, but it's strange that happened to me so many times. So you know how sometimes in a vehicle, and you guys have probably both experienced this with a safety tech, if the light or the glare hits things just right, for a half a second, your collision warning goes off or your lane keep goes off. It'll give you a little warning like this is not working. It happens in snowy weather too all the time, Sam. Sensors get covered with snow and ice, and until either it falls off or until you clear it off, those systems let you know, hey, we're not working right now because we can't see enough of the road to work. It happened to me at least a half a dozen times driving this car from the sun, the glare of the sun.
Oh, I had that happen with me on a Tesla.
It was weirdly.
And the first time I drove the Super Cruise with the Cadillac. It drove straight into the sun, and it's like, whoa, settle down, buddy.
This was more than any time I've ever, it was enough that at first I thought, why did that just turn off? And then I realized it was the glare of the sun. I started paying attention then. I counted it over a half dozen times. It was like, I think 7 times that I counted, but it was more than that before I was like, why does this keep happening? It wasn't quite registered. It was happening so frequently either. And it was sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening when the sun was just the right. It happened a lot. So I don't know what is with.
I had that happen
sun or-
last year with the Nissan Aria when I
Yeah.
was testing out the ProPilot Assist version 2.
Mhm.
Driving straight into the morning sun, it would repeatedly say, give me some error,
Right.
that the sensors were blocked, you need to clean the sensors. And it's basically just the cameras being blinded. The front facing cameras are being blinded by the sun. As soon as you're facing a slightly different direction, or sun gets a little bit higher up in the sky, it goes away. But yeah, it is an issue. And it's one of the challenges with relying on cameras for these types of systems, is that, cameras, visible light cameras can be obscured by the sun.
Right.
That's why there's several companies that are working on infrared cameras to augment the visible light cameras, so that they can filter out that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean you can get it on any car. It's not even a type of car, a style, or a price point. It can happen on the cheapest car. It can happen on the most expensive car. I just felt like it happened, and it could truly be the
Too many times.
Well, it also could be the time of year, which I know sounds like a cop out, but certain times of year, the glare and the sun, it can be very, very bad. And you feel like you're constantly, like in the evenings, it's hitting you just right, or in the mornings, it's always. And it might be the time of year that I'm driving that it's just okay.
I mean, different times of the year, especially in northern regions, the sun is lower in the sky.
The angle is very different.
Greater likelihood that you're going to hit that.
So I'm wondering if that's part of it, but that was my only true negative. Like, oh my gosh, I feel like it's constantly giving me warnings on the dashboard. And weirdly, my key fob's about to die. I got a warning. I didn't know this happened. Do you know this happens? If the battery in your key fob is low, it gives you like battery and key fob is low.
We've had that happen on our Civic. But I mean, we've had the Civic for almost 7 years now.
Yeah.
And I think the first of the fobs, the battery died probably about 4 or 5 years in. And it's just, you just pop it open. It's just one of those little coin cells.
So this one has 12,000 miles on this car, and the key fob battery is low. So I don't know what happened. I mean, theoretically,
is someone's key pocket and just being pressed the whole time.
Could have been pressed on it. So I don't know, but I've never had a car where the key fob was old enough, I guess, to die. And I was like, oh, it gives you a little warning in the dashboard or the instrument cluster. That's kind of convenient.
Well, it's probably also. It's a press car, so it's probably been used by people shooting videos and opening and closing the doors and the tailgate and everything else
100
countless times.
Yeah, that wasn't a complaint. It was more like, oh, I didn't even know that you got a notice in the instrument cluster because I've never happened to have a key fob in my pocket that got to that point. So
the Denali, or rather the Hornet, came into existence because they developed the Alfa Romeo Denali, and Dodge executive said, "Oh, we need a small crossover in our lineup." And
just
so they took it, put a grill that looks kind of like the grill on the front fascia on the Durango, scaled it down, fitted onto a Denali, and pissed off the guys in Italy to no end. And they did make a few other changes, like on the Denali, the stop start button, as with all Alfa Romeos, is on the steering wheel in the lower left quadrant, just below the left hand steering wheel spoke. But on the Hornet, they put that on the center console where the drive mode switch is in the Denali, and they put the sport mode button on the Hornet.
I also think the tuning's a little bit different between the two. The driving,
a little bit,
not markedly, but they're a little different. Oh, that was the only other thing that I find weird, and it's because you said Denali, and I remember it really driving me nuts when I drove that. The paddle shifters are gigantic.
Yes.
They're huge. So what happens is when you have your hands in the steering, you're driving and you go to hit the turn signal, you normally don't need to move your hands. You can just move your fingers almost. Just move your fingers out and you can turn the turn signal. You can't, because if you move your fingers back, you whack them on the paddle shifters. So you have to like...
Oh, are they not the ones that go with the wheel?
Yeah. I think they're mounted on the column, so they're static.
So when you move your fingers to,
those are the worst.
Like the steering wheel, or like if you just want to do the quick signal, like I'm changing lanes, you're not really turning it on. You can't, because as you go to move your hand, the number of times I flicked my fingers into that, I'm like, son of a gun. So I feel like those are not they need to be a little shorter and a little further in so that when you want to use the paddle shifters, you can, but when you just want to hit the turn signal, you can do that. Like
Or-
a very tiny
or it's
thing
on the
that's driving
wheel.
crazy. Yeah.
Like it's supposed to be. Because if you're turning, let's say you're taking a hard turn, you need to shift up or down for whatever reason. Let's say you need a downshift to come out as you're coming out of a corner. You can't with
Are they
with
mounted
those.
to the wheel? Are they mounted? It's not the where it's mounted; it's the size. It's
Oh, they're just too big.
They're just too big. They're too big and they're too long. Like they need to be
Yeah,
short.
that's because they're mounted on the column, so
They
they
are.
don't
Okay.
move with the wheel.
I was trying to remember. Like I don't even
So
remember.
as you turn the wheel, anything less than 90 degrees, you can still hit
so you
hit
can
those
still get them.
paddles.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So yeah, I don't like this. They're too big. They're in the way. And I suppose like many things, when you drive a car long enough, some of its quirks you get used to. But I have literally driven the Tonale quite a bit. This first time I think I've had this as alone, but like every single time smacked my nails on that paddle shifter. So again, small little first world problems, but I guess you don't really want to have to deal with that. So.
Yeah. And how much was this Hornet that you had?
Oh, I had the RT, which starts at 41.4. I think there was, I'm pretty sure that I had some additional packs. I was trying to build it and I was having a little trouble figuring out exactly what I had versus what is standard. So I'm probably as equipped. Mine was probably, I'm betting like a couple $1,000s more than that. But the RT starts the base trim 41.4 and the RT Plus is 46.4, and it gets like leatherette seats but I kind of like these. Honestly, I like the seats in this better than the leatherette. This just looks cool and fun.
A little bit less than the McLaren.
Just a skosh.
But you know what? McLaren has the paddles on the wheel.
See?
So as you're going on a track, you're on the road. Boom, bam, 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 bam.
Roughly $100,000 extra, you can get your paddle shifters in the right spot.
Well, 300,000.
300. Sorry. What am I thinking?
One house extra.
One house. For the price of a house, they'll put your paddle shifters in the correct location.
Bam.
Yeah, I had the Hornet GT last summer, and that's the non-hybrid one. That's just the 2-liter turbo.
Right.
And that one didn't have the paddles on it.
Got it.
So
I didn't have that problem. Yep.
So what else did you drive?
Well, I also drove something kind of fun. So I am a juror for the World Car of the Year Awards, which means we have cars to vote on that are from all over the world, some of which are either not out in the US or never going to be in the US. There is one that was up for a bunch of awards that is going to be here, but we haven't gotten it yet. The Volkswagen ID.7. They had it. They brought won a single Volkswagen ID.7 to the World Car Test Drives in California, at Pasadena, back in, when was the LA Auto Show? November?
November.
Yes. But they also said, hey, would you like to actually have a little bit more time in this? We can give it to you for 3 days. We'll deliver it. You drive it for 3 days. We'll take it back. So they gave it to us for 3 days. So I said, yes, I would like more time in it. So, because I got like 30 seconds looking at it in Pasadena because everybody wanted to drive it. So they trucked one up in a little enclosed truck from New York City, brought it up to me, had it for 3 days, put it back in the truck, drove it away. So, and this was actually, the thing is, excuse me, guys, frog in my throat. This is the Euro spec version of it. I don't know how many people know there is a difference. Like it can have the same exact name in multiple countries, but it's a little bit different sometimes from country to country. Sometimes because of regulations, they drive a little differently because they tune them differently. Like we're saying, the Hornet and the Tonale are tuned a little differently. You can get different tunings. So there are some differences between what you get in Europe and what you get in the US, even if the model has the exact same name. So this is technically a Euro spec model. In fact, I had European plates on the front. It had a Michigan plate on the back and a EU plate on the front. It was really freaky. So I had this for 3 days. So this is an EV. It'll be coming out the last half of the year in the US. They're saying Q3 as a 2025 model. And it's a sedan, but it's a hatchback. It looks for all the world like a sedan. You'd swear it's a sedan, but it actually has a hatchback. It's nice and roomy. I enjoyed driving this. I had it for a very short time, but it's, it was responsive, and I don't have a lot of specs. Like they don't have US specs. They have a lot of European specs, but they don't have anything finalized for US specs. Because I reached directly to Volkswagen and they said, this is what we can give you. And what they could give us is that they are targeting 300 plus miles of range in the United States. They're going to have It's getting a full leatherette interior inside and the fancy glass roof. There's this glass roof on this that actually is where you can make it either opaque or translucent. Boop, boop. You can flip it back and forth with the touch of a little button. Which is kind of nice if you want the light from a roof, but in glaring sun, it's not horrifically bright. You can sort of tone it down without having to close it entirely. I was debating whether that roof would stay for the US but they say it will, because if you do like a price comparison for what it's on sale in Europe and what it's on sale here, it'd be about $70K in the US, and no one's going to pay $70K for a Volkswagen sedan.
Well, keep in mind that European pricing includes their value-added taxes and stuff.
Right. So yeah. So, but when you transfer it out, so I would say we are safe in saying it's probably going to be around 50 grand to start in the US. That's probably a good bet. So it's not, again, not outrageously expensive, but it's not a cheap Volkswagen. I drove what they tell me is going to be equivalent to the top trim that we'll get in the US, and it has like adaptive damping and 21-inch wheels. So it was, for a Volkswagen, it had a more premium feel to it. Like Volkswagen is not a premium. They're not a fancy brand. They're not like trying to be a Mazda that gives you this sort of like luxury light kind of experience. But it was actually really nice interior, and it had nice details. It had this like blue piping trim all along the inside and some blue lighting. It really looked good, and it drove nicely. I enjoyed driving this. I thought it was a good car for the one day of actual driving that I had with it. I enjoyed it, and it was really roomy because Russ again sat up front. Kit sat in the back. He's over 6 feet. He's a giant like Robbie, and my daughter's average height. The two of them sat one behind the other, and it was plenty of room. Not even like, oh, she's tight, her knees are right against the seat. Plenty of room, even with that sort of slopey roofline it has for the hatchback. So I thoroughly enjoyed my time driving this. There were only thing that I didn't really like is they do have a large touch screen on this. And it is I want to say it's about 15 inches. It's a large touch screen that they have, but they packed all the controls into it. It's the latest version of the Volkswagen system. They put everything into the touch screen, including the vents. And no other OEMs have done this, and I don't like it. I don't know if you guys like it. If you want to change where your vent is aiming, you have to go into the screen, hold the thing.
Yeah, that's what Tesla
around.
does that. Rivian does that.
Right.
And Rivian, it's annoying.
And it looks cool. You're like, oh, cool. But then if you literally just want to bat the vent out of the way because somehow, or move it too quickly because suddenly the sun is streaming in or over. I apparently adjust my vents more than most people. I don't know. I adjust them as the sun coming in the car changes and I want hot air or cold air. You have to go in and you have to change it, and you have to slide it around with your finger, get it where you want it, and then come out again. I don't like that.
No, I don't like it either.
And again, it's a small thing, but I'm not keen.
No, it's actually not a small thing. It's a very important thing because, as you said, it is something that people use
more than they
fairly
think.
frequently.
Right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's, it's not, is it like, does the car not work? No, it works fine. But in terms of a comfort thing, if every time you want to change that, you have to go into the
it's a bad design.
It's a bad design.
It should not be done that way.
They're for air vents. I feel like they should be just reach out, grab your vent, move it, know?
It's interesting how much how we adjust controls in our vehicles, how often we adjust controls that we don't think we're actually touching.
Right.
We don't think we're changing the vents. We don't think we're adjusting mirrors. We don't think we're doing, turning, adjusting all these things. And then it gets put into a display, and then suddenly you're having to search for this because someone somewhere said, well, we can save some money. And, they only do this once, maybe twice. And
then they go, oh, people don't like that.
Yeah, because it turns out we're doing it far more than we thought we were doing it.
And I think it's something that, you'll get used to not having to search for it. It'll get quick to, boop, 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 go here. But I mean, really, like your passenger needs to adjust the air vents. You're like, touch that screen, touch here, touch there, move this. It's not.
Well, plus, again, you have to look at it to do it,
there's no muscle memory.
Swipe around to figure out, okay, where you want the air to flow.
Once you're on there and you're trying to pull it, if we've all used touch screens and you go to swipe, and you have not swiped. You have not, in fact, grabbed the thing you mean to grab. You're just running your hand along the screen. It's like if you don't hit it just right, you've actually not moved the vent. You've just slid your fingers and made a lovely little fingerprint on your screen. So it's not intuitive. So that was something that I genuinely was like, I don't like this. Otherwise, I thought it was a good vehicle. I like that the trunk seems very roomy. I liked how roomy it's, or the tail hatchback area. What do you call it? Cargo area. I'm
Boot.
like,
It's the boot.
boots. That didn't
That a
seem.
boot.
It seems roomy. And it was a nice, quiet ride. I mean, it's an EV, so of course you have the quiet of an EV. But in terms of the road noise and the wind noise, it was nice and quiet. I drove it over a bunch of really craptastic roads in New Hampshire because it's like frost heave season with everything freezing and thawing. It was really nice to drive. I genuinely liked it. Oh, and one of the things that I loved, I've never seen these before, but you guys, especially you, Robbie, you drive some fancier cars. You might know this. I think they're technically call them dynamic headlights.
Mhm.
It's not just that they move left and right, or that there's a light that pops up on the right when you have a right-hand turn signal. It actually looks and is like, if you have your high beams on and you're approaching another car, it doesn't put you in low beams. It changes the beam. So just the part of your high
It carves out the light. Yeah.
side, it carves out the little light so that car is not getting high beams, but the empty space to the right of the car, let's say, is still, and then it comes back again. And you can actually sort of see it like boop, 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 like move as far as it needs and then boop, 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 move back. And it does it with, and even will make your beams tip down sometimes. So they'll go left, right, depending on, like they'll dim and get brighter left and right. And they will also sort of dim down. So the beams point a little down so they're not blinding people. I even saw it a couple of times. It caught the reflection. You know how road signs have a certain amount of reflectivity to them. Some of them seem to reflect more vibrantly than others. There are a couple of brand new road signs here that have that super bright reflection to them, and it even dimmed that. So the reflection coming back at me, honestly, was not so like, I got it. It's exit 7. Like it dimmed it down a little bit because it took those as too much of a reflection. I know we have adaptive headlights in the US. I don't know.
This goes way beyond the adaptive headlights.
Right?
This
is way fancier.
This is a fight like 10-15 years in the making.
Right?
This fight, they get this sort of, like NHTSA kept saying no to this. Like automakers it's been in Europe forever.
Yes.
Yeah. NHTSA has a rule that it had to be a single bulb for everything. And so they did an initial study like in 2017 or 2000, I don't know, a long time ago, where they're like, well, in the lab, there was a motorcyclist who was kind of blinded by it at one point. And so they're like, we're not going to do it. And so then they had to lobby. And then finally they're like, okay, we'll do another, we'll start researching this again. But because you had the European version, you have the European lights, which everyone's still figuring out.
Those are actually becoming legal here in the US.
Yeah.
I know adaptive headlights are legal, but I wasn't sure, honestly, Sam, where the line, how adaptive? Do you know what I mean? Like, because these, like you said, go beyond that. I wasn't sure if these were going to be okay or not. And I did not have an opportunity to ask the Volkswagen folks if that was coming to the US.
Yeah, it may not be here when they launch the ID.7, but it is coming to vehicles here because
we're so close.
Yeah,
we're so close. We're so close to having them.
It was so neat. And even my daughter, where she's driving, I'm like, Kit, can you see that? She's like, I can, even from the passenger seat. She's like, what are those lights doing? She's like, that is the coolest thing. Because even she could see from her seat how they were just like, oh, there's something there. I shall dim. Now I shall brighten. Now I shall go down. Now I shall go up. It's like, they're the smartest little headlights I've ever seen. I thought that was amazing. And I thought to myself, every car in the US should have this. This should be we have here. It's so stinking cool. Like, go Volkswagen, bring it here. So
blame NHTSA.
Stupid NHTSA with your safety standards. But yeah, so I think that would be that was a cool feature. So I like the ID.7. I thought it was a really strong offering. And like I said, we don't have details because they don't have it was Euro spec car. They had European details they could confirm, but they couldn't confirm US stuff. But they did give me a little list of like, we can say this, we can say that, we can say the other thing, but it's still light on details. So we won't have that. I would guess it's probably going to start in the upper 40s and go to about 65,000. Yeah. So it's, so we got a little time before we'll have concrete details on it, but I do like it. I do think it was a nice Volkswagen and coolest headlights ever.
What I want is the ID.7 Tourer.
Oh yeah, they just showed off
in Germany.
Oh, you want that one? Yeah. I don't know if we get that one.
The wagon. We're not getting it.
We can't have nice things.
We can't have. No one buys them. Headlights for crying out loud.
There'll be like 20 people that will buy this. Yeah, unfortunately.
There'd be 21 if it was here. Is that what you're saying, Sam?
Yeah. No, we automakers will bring us wagons, and then journalists, we all get excited, and then no one buys them, and then they go away. Yeah, it's like we can sit there and ask for them all day, because we love them and we all want wagons, but the reality is U.S. people don't want
Don't
them.
really buy them. We seem
Well,
like
we buy wagons that are too tall. They call them SUVs, but they're really
tall wagons. Yeah, pretty much.
No one wants to be as cool as the Griswolds.
That was the ID.7 that I hope I get to, like, I'm looking forward to this coming out in the US and would love to see how ours looks. I'd love to see how it compares, but I like this. I like
it. Won't have the cool lights. That's what's going to be make you sad.
I know, it will make me cry.
the demo video I did at CES with the ChatGPT integration, that was actually in an ID.7. So they had the ID.7 at CES.
Oh. Okay.
And that's what they were using for those ChatGPT demos in the car. So yeah, hopefully we'll get to drive them in the next few months.
I would hope. Fingers
crossed. Well, we still have to drive the ID Buzz, the US. I drove the European version. We haven't driven the US version. It's supposed to come out this summer.
Summer? Is it?
That's what they said in
really just
July.
It's the 25th of February, so we're in March. So if it's coming out this summer, hopefully we'll get our hands on that one soon.
Yeah.
Which probably means fall. But okay.
Okay. Let's see. I had the Toyota Crown Platinum all-wheel drive. So the Crown we talked about when I think we did the first drive, so like in the fall of 22.
Yeah.
And finally got one for a longer test. And the Crown's kind of an odd duck. It sort of replaces the Avalon in the lineup. But it's a sedan, but sits a little bit taller. Well, the floor is a little bit taller, but you don't actually have any more ground clearance. So it's got the same ground clearance as the Avalon, but the floor is a little bit higher up. And then the roof line's not any higher. So you actually have less room in the Crown than you do in the Avalon. And it is, it's a fastback like the ID.7, but it is actually a sedan. It's got a trunk. It doesn't have a tailgate or, the lift gate or a hatchback like the ID.7, which given its shape probably would have made more sense to do it that way, but they didn't. So this is this is Toyota's larger car platform that they have. And they're soon going to be launching the Crown SUV. I forget is that what they're calling it? The SUV, or is there a different name for it? Anyway, but that's
called the Crown SUV. I don't know the different name.
That's coming in the spring. We saw that at the LA Auto Show. But the Crown sedan, is a nice looking vehicle. I had the Platinum that has the red and black two-tone configuration, which so the hood's black, the roof's black, the trunk is black, but the sides and other parts are red. And it's sort of a odd mix, but I kind of like it. I kind of like the red.
Is it the Signia?
As a child, as a 7-year-old, I had a kite that I really liked. We lived next to a field, and so I would just stand outside with my kite. And this is the exact same color scheme. So it just reminds me of a kite that I had as a child.
So the Signia, Signia, that's what the Toyota.
That's it. Crown Signia.
Toyota Crown Signia. I'm like, wait,
I knew it had an actual name. I couldn't remember what it is.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So all the Crowns are standard with a hybrid drivetrain. There's no conventional internal combustion only version of the Crown for this generation. And for the what is it? The let me find it here. The XLE and the Limited trims, they have, the standard 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder classic Toyota hybrid system version. So this is the exact same powertrain that you get in the Camry, in the Highlander, in the Sienna, and the RAV4, and a whole bunch of other vehicles. And then there's the Platinum, which is what I had, which has the Hybrid Max, which instead is a different system. So the base hybrid system, all the Crowns are also all-wheel drive. So you get an electric motor at the rear axle driving the rear wheels, and then the engine and the hybrid drive on the front wheels. The Platinum is the Hybrid Max system that debuted on the RX RX 500H, I think. Yeah, the RX 500. And so this has the 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, and instead of the ECVT hybrid drive unit, it has a conventional 6-speed automatic with an electric motor embedded in there, plus an electric motor on the rear axle. So the base hybrid system is 236 combined horsepower. The Hybrid Max is 340 horsepower and up to 400 foot-pounds of torque, which you feel that difference when you drive it. And certainly when we drove the Grand Highlander last year with that same powertrain, same thing. You really feel that difference between the two, and it's in many ways more pleasant to drive because it's a conventional step ratio automatic. It doesn't have any of that motor boating sound where when you go to accelerate, it revs up to 4,000 RPM and sits there while the car speeds up. It's got a more traditional sound and feel to it. The performance was good. Handling's fine. It's not a sports car. It's not a sports sedan, but it's good. Decent performance, good body control, good ride quality. The fuel economy was a little disappointing.
Really?
Yeah, this one, it's EPA rated at 30 miles per gallon combined, 29 city, 32 highway. The standard hybrid system's a little over 40, I think. But it's 30 combined for the Hybrid Max system. I only got 24.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, that's significantly
And,
off.
it's not like I was, beating this thing up or anything. I wasn't,
Right.
I was driving it fairly, the way I drive everything. And I usually get pretty close to the EPA numbers. So, this one only got 24, which was definitely on the low side of what I was expecting.
That's only 8 better than the McLaren I was driving. I'm just saying.
Yeah. But, you can put 5 people in this. Can you put 5 people in a McLaren?
I mean, if you're creative.
Yeah, I mean, and who has 4 friends? 4 friends? What's that?
Good point.
He's just really popular, Robbie.
If you have a McLaren, do you really need friends?
No. You get the McLaren, and then as soon as an automaker puts a wagon out, you just buy that for you and your dogs. And that's
go.
it. McLaren and a wagon. You're good to go.
All right. So, the Crown is a pleasant enough vehicle. It had, this one was pretty much fully loaded with all, as a Platinum. So, it's got the Toyota Safety Sense 3.0. So you got all the adaptive cruise control and lane departure warning. And actually that stuff's all standard on all Crowns anyway. And it's got the drive assist system. It'll at low speeds, you can actually go hands off. Like if you're in stop and go traffic, you can go hands off at up to about 30 miles an hour. When you're in traffic, just a traffic jam assist is what they call it. And it does have a infrared driver monitor, which in addition to making sure that you're watching the road when you're using traffic jam assist, just anytime you're driving, it'll also alert you if you're looking away from the road for too long. So if you're distracted by something, it'll give you an alert saying, "Hey, eyes back on the road, dude." It's a pleasant enough vehicle to drive. Like I said, the configuration seems a little odd, just because of that kind of high floor. But other than that, for a larger sedan, given that there are fewer and fewer of these available in the marketplace, it's not a bad option. And the regular hybrid version will get you, like I say, 41 miles per gallon combined. And, from what generally those, it's pretty easy to hit those numbers, those EPA numbers, in real world driving. So the all-in price of the Crown that I had, the Crown Platinum, with, there was only a handful of options, 50 state emissions, premium paint, or actually 50 state emissions as standard. The premium paint charge, that's for the two-tone paint. It was $425 for premium paint, and then another $550 for the two-tone paint. And then the side puddle lamps, $165, mud guards, and rear bumper applique. So all in came to $55,838, which seems a little pricey. But then again, everything's getting expensive these
Everything's
days.
pricey. Would you pay much for it, Sam?
Probably not. I don't think so. I don't think that.
Let's see, how much
and
is
it's not so much as the price. It's just that it's just not the car I want to be driving.
That's fair.
It's pleasant enough, and if you want a larger sedan like this, it's fine. But I personally don't think I'd want one of these. But if you like the look and you want
55. So you can get the i4 with all-wheel drive for 61, or a rear-wheel drive i4 for 52.
I would probably take the rear drive i4. I'd take the
i4.
i4 with the eDrive 40.
Oh, that's 57.
Oh, that's 57. Well, still, for
$2,000 more, you're driving a BMW.
Yeah, I would take that one, and that's got hatchback, so you've got a little more flexibility in terms of putting big stuff in.
That i4 is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. And it's electric and considerably more efficient than at least what I saw in terms of real world driving with this one. So that is the Toyota Crown Platinum. All right, let's see. Let's go back to you, Nicole.
Yes.
You also had a chance to drive the 2025 Ram 1500.
I did. I got a chance to drive the Ram 1500. So it's not an all new, but it's got some pretty big changes. One of them is the V8. Bye-bye. There's no Hemi. So you have to get over that. Gonzo. You have a choice of a V6, which is 305 horsepower, or there's a twin turbo inline six with two different power outputs. There's either 420 or 540 horsepower. So you still have good oomph from that. I mean, we drove that. It was fine. It was very robust. It didn't feel lacking. I mean, if you're someone who loves the Hemi, you're probably still going to just be sad if you have a love affair with the Hemi, but it's not like it makes this a horrible truck to drive or anything. Still really robust. Range of pricing, which is crazy on trucks. Base is around $42,000, or with the highest trim, that's a new trim they've introduced, $89,000 base price for the highest trim without adding extra.
That's the tungsten, right?
That's the tungsten. So the tungsten is a new trim. It sits above the limited. So the limited was already a really nice. It was a beautiful truck. It was a very fancy truck. But now, don't forget that we went one better. We went with tungsten, and it gets metal badging. It says tungsten on the door sill, and there's a little plate on the backs of the headrest, and there's stuff on the center console that I think it even has the VIN number. It says tungsten, and the VIN is under it. So it gets all the bells and whistles to make it look very fancy on the interior. It also gets, I'm going to say the name of this company wrong because I always say it wrong, a 23 speaker Klipsch audio system. Did I say that right? Because I feel Klipsch. Which is fantastic. It's amazing. And what's really funky is when you look on the backs of the front seats, there's a silver speaker grill. I want to say, I don't know, maybe 3x3 square on each of the backs of the front seats. So it looks kind of funky. It's right there. It's pretty, but you're also like, what is this? It makes me think of ventilation. It should somehow be like an air vent or something, but no, it's a speaker. So they have that. It has a 14.5 inch touchscreen. That's the other thing that's new. The old 8.4 inch screen is no more. It's now their 12 or a 14.5 inch screen. So you have a nice large screen on it, which just kind of upgrades the interior in general, aside from the tungsten being fancy. Just smaller screens, especially on trucks. Truck screens are getting huge. So when you see a small one, it suddenly feels very, very, very small on a big giant truck dashboard. So it's nice that they upgraded those. And they gave the passenger, and it's only in specific trims, there's a passenger screen. It's a 10.3 inch touch screen that has limited functionality. I know you can control, I think you can do navigation stuff, you can do streaming stuff, you can do audio stuff. So it gives you a certain amount of control over some of the things that the driver would be okay with relinquishing. It's not going to take over drivery stuff. And you can't see it the Wagoneer has this. You can't see it from the driver's side. Like literally, if you're sitting in the driver's seat and you want to see this, you have to lean so far over that like your head is level with the shoulder of the person in the passenger seat to be able to see that screen. So in terms of distracted driving, they've done a very good job. You are not going to see that passenger screen. I've had a couple of cars. This was just in a first drive. I've had vehicles that have had this at home, and for about 5 minutes, the front passenger thinks it's nifty to just have a screen directly in front.
I don't think my wife even lasted 5 minutes.
Not even
with the,
5
with the
minutes.
Jeep.
No, I couldn't
It's
get
like,
5.
it's kind of like, I got my own screen. Oh, that was cool.
And then back to their phone, and then just back to the phone. That's the thing, is everyone just goes back to their phone.
It's for 5 minutes, you have what you want on your screen, but so it's, I don't know how I feel. I kind of feel like passenger screens are a little bit gimmicky. I think it's to add extra screen to the car, but so many of the vehicles, like take Ram out of the picture, they're not even if it's not a passenger screen, they're doing that, multiple screens. What is the Lincoln does it? Why am I forgetting which Lincoln? It's like the
Nautilus.
The Nautilus, and it's like screen everywhere. So there's this need for screen everywhere, and I feel like that's what the passenger screen is supposed to do. Is it cool? Like you said, 5 minutes or for less than that if you're Julie. But it's kind of gimmicky. But the
I've had multiple people in multiple cars with passenger screens, not just my wife who's like, no. Like other people, they're just like, okay. So like I don't know what I don't know who they're talking to, who's saying yes, we should totally put these in the car.
And like even my daughters, so they're in their 20s, right? So they're younger, and they're both like, oh, this is cool. What's it do? Okay, like so it's not we're old farts. No, my 20-year-old kids were like, cool, I guess, So even they were impressed with the whole idea of it. But yay, you can get one in select trims in the new Ram. They still have the they still have the Rebel for doing off-roady stuff, and they've made that a little bit more robust. We did have an off-road course that we took it on. That was a pretty solid off-road course. It did take you into some, it was on this, we were on this ranch, I guess, in Texas, and it took us down this thing that looked like at some point there was a river there. There's all those gnarly rocks and stuff that you go around and tight turns. And I do think it was surprisingly nimble trucks are not small, especially not the Rebel, and trying to get in and out of that stuff, it handled pretty well. And it was, it's a decent little off-road truck if you want to do that. There's also new, and they don't have a name for it. You know how Blue Cruise and Super Cruise, that's Ford's and GM names, right? They don't have
hands-free driving assist.
Hands-on driving assist or hands-free driving assist. There's no name. Yeah. So everyone's like, is there a name? They're like, no, just hands-on and hands-free. Oh, okay. So you got this fancy screen, but you can't name your system. I don't know. So there was not enough. The hands-free was only on the tungsten. The rest of them had the hands that had the hands on. So I experienced the hands on through whatever vagaries of who got what car. I didn't get a chance to drive the tungsten for very long at all. Like I kind of drove it in the parking lot there, so I wasn't able to try the hands free. The journalist that I was with that tried it said they thought it was pretty solid, that it did really well. But the hands on we could try, and you could try that in sort of like stop and go traffic. There was a lot of, and it did really well. You just barely need to have your hand on there just so it knows you're paying attention kind of thing. It did a great job of like slowing and starting. And so it's a nice system. I would have loved to have gotten a little time to really play with the hands-free driving, but no such luck. So nice updates. And the plug-in hybrid, which is going to be the Ram Charger, and the EV, I just have Ram 1500 EV. It's Ram Rev. Is it the Rev?
Ram Rev is the.
I think I wrote electric Ram EV, and I'm like, no, it's Ram Rev. Those were there for us, I believe, to see, but not to experience just yet. So we didn't drive those, and they won't be coming out till later this year, I think.
Yeah, I think the Rev comes out in Q4, and then the Ram Charger early in the new year.
Right. So it's going to be basically a year before we see those, but they are coming. So for right now, there is no EV or, plug-in hybrid version of Ram vehicles, but you still have, it's still got plenty of capability. It's not the most capable of trucks. Like if you want to max out that tow rating and max out that payload, this has an 11,580 pound tow rating and 2,300 for payload. Still plenty of stuff. you can bring along. But if you want to max out, this is not your Huckleberry. Pick a different truck. But I do still like the, I've felt with the last generation of the Ram 1500, I feel like they did an amazing job upgrading their interior, beautiful interior, really nice, smooth ride.
This was already the best in class interior
Right.
anyway.
It was. And so now the generation brought it up. This just refines it a little bit more. They did a couple of tweaks to the exterior styling, but nothing dramatic. Because again, this isn't an all new. This is sort of like a mid-cycle refresh, I guess almost you call it.
Yeah.
So
it's a pretty heavy mid-cycle refresh.
Pretty heavy mid-cycle.
Visually, it doesn't change that much, but
right.
The obviously the powertrain is different.
The powertrain is the big thing, and it's as they're moving towards that EV powertrain. It's like, okay, we're gonna get rid of the Hemi. We're gonna give you this inline, turbo inline six. We're moving you towards the new powertrain. So it's like the first step in getting us to electrified Ram 1500. So overall, I liked it. I thought the tungsten was great. If you want, it's funny because, in Ford, the King Ranch, that is all, it's the logo everywhere. And it's like King Ranch in your face. This is kind of the same way with the tungsten. It's like, this is the tungsten. And it does look cool if you want to have the fanciest. And I think it's, and it's $89,000. But when you get into any truck, when you're at Ford's the same way, when you get to that top trim that is really not so much about, I want to be the most capable truck on the planet, but I want you to feel like you're driving a luxury truck. It's
a luxury car.
It's a luxury car in truck form, and the tungsten definitely feels it. Honestly, the Limited felt that way too, but this just takes it a step further. It's a little bit more aggressive, and the tungsten badge is kind of cool. It looks neat. So it is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and the same amazing ride quality that the Ram 1500 has had for a while. So I feel like it's a good step forward in the right direction for Ram.
Do you think that the absence of V8 engines, is the Hurricane going to be enough for Ram owners, Ram buyers?
I think yes, with a caveat, if they give it a chance and drive it. If they're a V8 and they're a Hemi guy and they're like, I must have my V8, this is garbage, they're never going to know. If they get behind it and can let go of that for a second and just drive it and say, wait, does this do what I want it to do? Does this drive the way I want it to drive? Is it still responsive? Is it still aggressive? Does it still feel like I've got some power? If you can just let go your preconceived notions, just drive it for a second. Yeah, I think it's going to be fine. But I do think people who are just like V8 or die won't even give it a chance. And I think that's a shame because I think the Hurricane is a great engine.
Yeah. And frankly, I don't think that's going to be that big of an issue because, if you look at F-150, less than 10% of sales are the Coyote V8. 90% of sales, for the last two generations have been V6s, mostly turbo V6s, right. The 2.7 and the 3.5 liter EcoBoost engines. So, I think, people are going to try this and say, yeah, okay, it's fine. It doesn't have that V8 rumble, but, for what most people are going to use the truck for. And the Hurricanes, the two versions, the 410 and the 520 horsepower versions they're actually more powerful than the 5.7 and the 6.4 liter V8s anyway.
Exactly.
More power, more torque.
The thing is, they're right? more powerful vehicles, and people are like,
if you can just,
you get the inline six, the best motor on the planet.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Everyone can just calm down and realize you don't have to have a V8 in order to have a powerful, aggressive, responsive vehicle. You really don't have to have that. It's 2024. There are better options out there. And this is a great option.
Yeah. The only thing that, that we're losing this year is the TRX, with the Hellcat V8.
Is how many I did not look that up. Did they sell?
They've never said how many they've sold. I think it's, probably on the order of, probably 2,000 to 3,000 a year.
So it was kind of mass.
That was a very expensive truck anyway. That
was also more, it was about the power, but it was also about the bazonkers capability of that. You know what I mean? So,
and they are, sometime this summer, I think they're launching the RHO.
Yes.
Which they haven't said, what it stands for, but obviously it's Ram High Output. Right. Which is going to have, the high output Hurricane. It's basically a TRX with the Hurricane 6-cylinder in there.
So that will be the, for the people who wanted that
Yeah.
If you want that kind of truck or that kind of vehicle, you just have to sort of, to a certain point, you got to resign yourself that things change and they change, and sometimes they change and they're better. Sometimes they just change and they're different, but the change is going to happen. Things are going to move forward. Things are going to change. And I feel like, these are good changes. I think in the end, people are going to be fine with them. And I think the things, you're never going to get that V8 guttural from these, but it still in other ways delivers.
And if you absolutely positively still have to have a V8 powered Ram 1500, they do still sell the Ram Classic, the Ram 1500 Classic, which is
There you go.
like the generation before.
Right.
They still sell those,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you can get that with a V8 engine with the 5.7 Hemi for now, at least.
For now. Now that Sam said that, tomorrow we've discontinued.
Look what you did, Sam. Look what you did.
What you did.
I think they'll probably for at least another year or two they'll keep selling that, and at some point they'll probably phase out the Ram Classic just because it is old,
Right.
but for now it is still available.
Like, as long as they're selling enough of them for it to make sense, why would they not?
Yeah.
If the numbers work, they'll keep doing it.
Yep. All right. Let's see. I went out to California actually a couple of weeks ago now to drive the Honda Prologue, which is the first purpose-built battery electric Honda for the North American market. Previously they've sold the Clarity as an EV, which was not really very good because it only had about 85 miles of range. And they had,
it was very comfortable inside, though.
It was, yeah.
That was their thing. It's really comfortable inside. That was sort of the selling point. They're like, all right,
just couldn't go very far.
Yeah.
And they also had the Fit EV like a decade ago, which those were only available through lease. You couldn't even actually buy those, and that one was truly a compliance car. And then in Europe they've had the Honda E for a couple of years. And they've had some other small EVs in other markets, but this is the first one we get, and this is basically a Honda-fied version of the Chevy Blazer EV.
Honda-fied.
Honda-fied.
Yeah, I mean,
how did it go? Given that the Chevy Blazer EV had some missteps,
it has some software issues, and it remains to be seen, when those will go back on sale, as they're trying desperately to fix that software. So the software is still a problem in there. We didn't see any issues with the software in the Prologues we drove.
That's good.
So the Prologue has the same 121, I think 0.8 inch wheelbase. So it's a very long wheelbase as the Blazer. And it's like within an inch in all dimensions relative to the Blazer, also the Cadillac Lyriq, and the upcoming Acura ZDX. The main differences, obviously, the styling is very different. The Blazer is very in your face. The Prologue looks very much like a Honda, and I think it looks good. I like the design of the Prologue. It's a little more reserved, than a Blazer. It's definitely not quite so bold to look at. So I like the design. It's a 2-row crossover, 5-seater, and same height and everything. What in the case of the Prologue, it's only available with an 85 kilowatt hour battery pack. So this is, the GM Ultium battery packs. They can put in different numbers of modules in there depending on the capacity you need for a given application. So for the initial versions of the Blazer, they're doing it using a 12 module pack, which is also what will be in the ZDX, and it's also what's in the Lyriq. And those are like 102 kilowatt hours. And they've taken out 2 modules for a 10 module pack. And there will, when they get around to launching the LT version of the Blazer, it will also be available with the same 10 module pack. So it'll be a little more affordable than the ones that they launched with. The interior is another place where the two are quite different, where the Blazer and the Prologue are very different. The Blazer, at least the ones that we drove, which were the RS trim levels, which is the mid-level trim. So they have LT, RS, and SS for Blazer. The SS is the high performance one that's coming sometime later this year. And then the LT is the base model. We don't know what the trim looks like in the LT. Nobody's actually seen one yet. But the Blazer RS definitely feels more premium than the Prologue. The Prologue, while the design was good, I like the layout, where all the controls were, and like the Blazer, they keep physical controls for climate control and volume and tuning knobs, things like that. So they keep all the right stuff as physical controls that you need. But the ones that we drove, all the ones they had at the drive program were the top level Elite trim. So they have the EX, the Touring, and the Elite as the three trim levels. And all the ones we drove were Elites. So these were loaded models. And even, with this loaded Elite dual motor all-wheel drive, the materials inside this thing really felt kind of cheap. It was hard plastics on the console and then the doors and everything. And given that this thing, has a price of $59,295, felt kind of cheap. If it was $40,000 or less, I wouldn't have an issue with those materials.
Mm-hmm.
But at $60,000, it's starting to push it, and you could see where they tried to take some cost out of this thing. But that said, it's not, they did manage to, maintain the noise qualities of it. It's still quiet, drives really nice. We were driving it in Northern California. We drove north from Healdsburg, up into the mountains, and quite pleasant to drive. Although, even though the Prologue is lighter than the Blazer, in part probably because of the fact that it does eliminate some of those higher end materials, some of the features. It does have the smaller battery. That's going to save you about probably 150 to 200 pounds on the battery. So the Prologue Elite has a curb weight of 5,273 pounds, which is about 600 pounds less than the Blazer RS that we drove in December. And despite that reduction in weight, it actually doesn't really feel that much. I mean, 5,200 pounds, almost 5,300 pounds is still pretty heavy.
Mm-hmm. And
so these were the same all-wheel drive setup that's in the Blazer RS. So it's the E all-wheel drive. So you get the 212 horsepower front motor, and so it's primarily front wheel drive, and then a smaller AC induction motor on the rear axle. So it's set up, kind of like a typical all-wheel drive crossover that is primarily front drive, and then it sends some torque to the rear axle when you need some extra traction. So it's 288 horsepower, which, in a vehicle this size normally would not be that, would probably be fine, because this is not that far off, it's kind of in between the size of a Pilot and a Passport. And, the Pilot, has similar output from its V6 engine, but the Pilot probably weighs about 1,000 pounds less than this does. And you feel that in the way this thing accelerates. It does not accelerate the way we've become accustomed to with EVs. And frankly, it feels kind of sluggish. And I'll be curious to try out the front wheel drive version, which only has 212 horsepower. It's also, it's a couple 100 pounds lighter still, because you get rid of the rear motor. But it didn't feel like it had much get up and go. And maybe part of that is being spoiled by all the other EVs we've driven that are so much quicker off the line. But, trying to accelerate, up a hill, to make a passing maneuver, it just felt, kind of, I'll get there eventually,
Oh, jeez. That's so great.
which, like I say, it's not. I mean, like it'll do 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds, which is, by today's standards is actually kind of slow, but it's still, it's quick enough. I mean, it'll be fine. It's more than fast enough for, merging onto highways and things like that. But as people have gotten used to other EVs, it might seem a little down compared to other EVs. Um, there's no front trunk, just as there isn't on the Blazer or the Lyric. Uh, it is roomy inside. The second row seats. You get plenty of head and leg room, even with the front seats moved back. So there's plenty of space for 5 people in there. There's about 25 cubic feet of cargo space in the front wheel drive model. The rear drive or the all-wheel drive, because the floor is a little bit higher to accommodate the motor in the back there. It's about a little less than 24 cubic feet, which is still plenty. You'll have no problem, putting in bags, for 4 or 5 people in there, or if you've got a couple of kids, like the kids' gear and everything. They had one there with a Moto Compacto sitting in the back, and it didn't take up much space at all. So the the Prologue is fine. It's generally well executed. It's just, it doesn't feel like a nearly $60,000 vehicle.
That's
and
the problem.
yeah, so the performance is just okay. And it looks good, but the interior doesn't feel like it should be costing almost 60 grand. And it doesn't move like a 60 grand vehicle. I mean, for this price point, this is not, this is about the same price as the starting price for a Cadillac Lyric, and the Lyric feels quicker. So, although this does have, a regular glove box that, with a latch on there, you could just reach over and pop it open. You don't have to go through the touch screen to open the glove box. So that's a plus.
Woohoo!
That's what you're paying for.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're giving up all the other stuff for that. So if you like Hondas, and I certainly do, if you feel like paying the premium for this over a Pilot or a Passport, then you'll probably be perfectly happy with it. It feels like a Honda in most respects. It's just priced closer to a Cadillac than priced more like like what you would expect an Acura of this size and class to be, rather than a Honda. So yeah, and the ZDX is going to be considerably more expensive still than this. But it'll also be a lot more powerful, because it'll have rear wheel drive or the higher performance all wheel drive system. So it'll have 500 horsepower in the ZDX Type S. So nearly double what this thing has. So yeah, that's the Honda Prologue, and Honda said that they are expecting to sell about 40,000 of these in the first full year, and then about 70,000 a year after that. Given that so far in almost 3 years that GM has been building Ultium-based EVs, they have built and sold fewer than 20,000 in total of the Hummer and the Lyric and the Blazer and the Silverado. I'll be curious to see when GM can actually deliver that many of them, but
maybe they'll just get some cruises out. And
Yeah.
put some Honda, Civic on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, this didn't have any of the software issues that have been associated with the Blazers, even though it's running the same software platform underneath. So we didn't have any issues there. And 150 kilowatt DC charging capacity. And since there's only one DC charging station in the vicinity of Healdsburg, an Electrify America station, and they told us, yeah, don't bother going over there to do any charging tests, because we went and checked it yesterday. Only one of the 4 chargers was actually working. And then the next closest one was an EVgo station in Santa Rosa, which is almost 20 miles south in the opposite direction we were driving. So we didn't test that, but Honda had a trailer with a generator and some portable DC fast chargers that they were using to charge these up between drive waves. But yeah, it's that, and that's, in California, you're not, we're not talking about being that, it's like an hour and a half north of San Francisco. It's not a particularly remote area, and lack of charging infrastructure there is pretty severe. So, you probably want to think about that when you're considering whether to buy one of these. So these are supposed to be available by the end of March. We'll see, if GM can actually deliver them or not. But
I love how everything we're like, this should be available by fill and date OEM says. It probably means fill and date 2 months later.
Yeah.
Or a year. Or 6 months later. None of us trust any of it anymore.
Exactly. Well, especially where GM's involved on this stuff. I did have a chance to sit down with John Hwang again. He's the chief engineer on the Prologue and the ZDX, and we talked about how they went through the development of this vehicle. And I'm going to drop that conversation in here now, and we'll be right back. John, always good to talk to you. Now that we've had a chance to drive the Prologue, I want to talk a little bit more in depth than the last time we talked about it. So first off, when did the development start on this with your co-development partner?
It started in the spring of 2020, actually.
Oh, okay. So 4 years.
Yeah, the collaboration was announced, I believe, in March of 2020. And then we started working on it pretty quickly right after that.
Okay. And how did that process work between Honda and General Motors? Like what, how much influence did Honda actually have on this platform?
Yeah, good question. So as the agreements were coming along, there's kind of a arrangement or collaboration of who would lead what area, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously, GM with the RTM platform would control or manage that integration. So that would be the chassis, platform, powertrain, batteries, and things like that, electrical architecture. And then Honda's responsibility was the top hat. So the upper body or then the interior, what the customer would see. So, in creating the first purpose-built electric Honda, at least for the North American market, you had some overseas, but the first one built from the ground up as an EV. What were some of your main goals in creating this vehicle? Yeah, what we wanted to do was kind of come in around this timing where the US EV sales are hitting 10%, so it was a good time for us to come in, and we wanted to really introduce a long range, mainstream kind of a mid-size CUV form factor that young families and active families are looking for. So really, the RTM platform enabled that. So it was a really good collaboration. It's a win-win for both companies.
And in creating it, something that was specifically Honda, what were the kinds of attributes that you were looking for, or that your team was looking for, in making this a distinctly Honda vehicle as opposed to one of the other vehicles off the same architecture?
Yeah, right. So what kind of we did one of the first things we did was we sent up Honda cars to the GM Proving Ground, and together the two sets of test engineers drove the cars together so that we had a common vocabulary or common understanding of how a Honda feels and what we wanted to impart in the complete vehicle. So then with that kind of common goal, then we set the best parts that we could adjust and tune to give that Honda feeling. Yeah.
So within that scope of that collaboration with the GM engineers, did that influence them to maybe make some adjustments in the things that they were responsible for, like the core platform, that helped you to achieve maybe a little bit more distinctly Honda feel to any of the car?
Yeah, I mean the things that we focused on or prioritized as something that would give that Honda feeling was steering, so power steering effort, damper and spring settings, the valving and the spring rate. So those were things that really gave us a big bang for the buck. So those are kind of things that we focused on. And so we would have Honda dynamic engineers like Shin you met earlier. He would go to the GM Proving Ground for weeks at a time and just go iterate, try all different combinations, and just drive back and back to back, and work with the GM engineers and work with the suppliers to really develop that Honda feeling.
And in the way that this vehicle was being developed, were there things about developing this new platform and this vehicle that were different or changed from the traditional way that you've done Honda vehicles in the past? In terms of some of the processes, some of the tools, maybe more simulation?
I think, the car development is pretty similar to all the different OEMs. It's just that the process or the software used or the language used is a little bit different. But it was truly, it was an interesting collaboration based on how the scope of work is, right? So the top hat outside engineering was Honda. The design, the styling was Honda Studio. But the full vehicle aerodynamics was General Motors.
Okay.
So we would have to we had weekly meetings, and we would exchange data and discuss, if the studio can change this fillet, this surface here a little bit like this, we can get 3 counts, 2 counts, right? And so it was really totally a collaboration,
So did GM do like all the wind tunnel testing on this?
Yeah, and then Honda engineers and Honda studio members would come to their wind tunnel, and we developed
the
it
one
together.
in Warren?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it was really truly a collaboration. It wasn't really about us versus them or whatever. It was just everybody who was going to help develop this car. That was really truly a wonderful collaboration.
Actually, it sounds like it's kind of similar to the way it would be if it was just Honda people. It's just you had GM people.
Yeah, so it doesn't. Yeah, so your company badge name didn't really. On your ID really didn't matter. You're the aerodynamics engineer.
Yeah.
I'm the body engineer, and he's the designer.
All right.
You still have the same job. It doesn't matter who you.
Maybe similar to the way that Honda engineers and designers here in the U.S. would be working with engineers in Japan or in Europe on a program.
Yeah.
It's a
And
global program.
the majority of our engineers from Honda were working out of Japan, so we kind of had to have meetings timed that would align.
Early morning, late evening,
or later in the evening, that would work for everybody. And usually, when it involved the studio, which was in Los Angeles, it was then later in the night was better in the evening.
So, what in going through this process over the past 4 years, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome to get the vehicle to where it is today? And I guess, are you satisfied with where you got to over the last 4 years?
Oh yeah, I think the team is really proud, and I think both sides are really proud of what we've been able to deliver. It's met all of its requirements and timeline and quality gates. So we're really, I think we've done a great job. So we're really proud of it. And I would say any of the challenges or difficulties are pretty standard. Are your timelines being met? Are your metrics being met? And then how you recover that, or how you make sure you can get that right. So those are pretty standard kind of things. Nothing particular about, nothing particular about it being an EV or an ICE car. Aerodynamics I brought up earlier. So, that took a lot of work, and how important aero is on an EV. Mass also is super important. So those are, but they're just as important on an ICE car, right? But
especially so on an EV, because one of the things you want to do is reduce drag throughout the vehicle, so that you have the maximum opportunity to recuperate energy back to the battery during when you're slowing down.
So really, we spent a lot of effort on aero and mass optimization. So it was a lot of work on both teams.
What's the coefficient of drag on the Prologue?
Honda doesn't disclose that number, because basically every OEM measures it differently.
Yeah, it's going to vary. You can put the same vehicle in 5 different wind tunnels and get 5 different numbers.
Exactly. So it's not something worth declaring, because every OEM is different. Yeah.
Let me rephrase the question then. Compared to, say, something like the Pilot, how or the Passport, which is more similar sized, mid-sized 2-row crossover, how much better, relatively is it?
That's a good question, because we've, as I said, the full vehicle aero responsibility was with GM, so we used their measuring method. So I can't even convert it to the wind tunnel numbers. It doesn't even exist. Yeah, we could take the car and put it in our wind tunnel, but
So we don't have a direct comparison.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every OEM is different. The machine is different. The equipment is different.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to get a apples to apples
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
number. Yeah.
So one of the things about the Prologue, this is the first production Honda vehicle to offer a 21-inch wheel and tire combination. From a ride and handling perspective, obviously that adds some mass and has an impact on ride and handling. Was that a challenge for you in terms of getting that Honda feel with that combination?
Yeah. So it took a lot of effort because now you have 19-inch wheel and tire combination, front wheel drive, all wheel drive. Then you have 21-inch all wheel drive. So there were so many variations to develop, but I think it's very successful as you tried today. So it does have its particular tuning challenges, but you can, Shin Nakamura-san did such a great job, with his team working with General Motors and the suppliers to adjust it. Yeah.
Now,
And that EV platform, the Ultium platform, has so much bandwidth,
Yeah.
so many wheel tire packages, and so it was really kind of like a menu. We want this, and they're like, yes.
yeah,
That was fantastic.
you can get exactly the kind of feel you want.
Yeah.
And I know, having driven the Blazer now, with the same all-wheel drive configuration as this, this one does feel a little more comfortable in terms of ride quality, but without feeling soft or anything like that. I mean, it still feels totally controlled.
Yeah, I mean, the Ultium platform has so much bandwidth
Yeah.
and so much modularity with all the different features or hardware sets that are available that it really, and such a software-defined structure that you can really individualize and you can express each brand's, promise.
Yeah. The attributes that
Yeah.
go with the brand, right?
So, one of the differences between this and the Acura ZDX that I think you were also responsible for is the choice of the battery capacity. And this has a 10 module battery pack, 85 kilowatt hours, and the ZDX has the 12 module pack. So it's the same physical form factor of the pack, just populated with 2 fewer modules. What was the decision there in going with the slightly smaller battery capacity for the Prologue versus the ZDX?
Is kind of as a more of a mainstream product, the Prologue had to kind of balance the range, the mass, and the price. So the 10 module battery offers that best compromise or the best balance. So you can get the 296 mile range, but also be reasonably priced.
Right.
So on the ZDX, as a more premium product, a little bit higher expectation from the customers, right? So we can put a bigger motor in the back, more power, and then still deliver that range. Yeah. So that's kind of the trade-offs or the considerations you have.
With this vehicle platform and going forward, for your other Honda designed EV platforms, I think they're kind of at the forefront of this shift towards what called the software defined vehicle, where everything in the vehicle is so much more based around the software. Was that a challenge for you and your team in getting everything to work? And obviously, we've heard about some of the challenges that GM's having, but and most manufacturers are having challenges getting software to work properly on their new vehicles. And how, was this kind of the first time for a Honda effort that there's been this level of software definition in the vehicle?
Honda's responsibility for software in the car was kind of the user experience or the HMI. So, we collaborated with the GM software team to understand and define how we wanted to execute that. And it is very deep, and a lot of capability and a lot of, I guess, use the same word, bandwidth on what you have information that you can produce to the customer. Yeah. So it's been really a fun experience. Yeah. So our UX designers really had to learn and understand that kind of activity, that kind of development.
Mentioned a couple times mass. Yeah, that's obviously a challenge for EVs because batteries are heavy, and there's just there's no way around that. So, was there anything that you and your team were able to do in designing the structure, the top hat structure, or any other aspects of areas that you had responsibility for to help take some mass out of at least the Prologue.
Yeah, like the upper body. So that was Honda development responsibility. So, you had to optimize it for rigidity and making sure everything was attached and it met all the natural frequency and hardness and stiffness,
Safety requirements.
safety requirements. So all of that at a system level, then as an entire vehicle level. So then you start looking for opportunities. You punch out a big hole there and then see does the CA still support, still meet all the requirements. So those are the kind of places where we try to optimize, go for the thinnest gauge sheet metal. So we did all that and to try to reduce the mass. So especially on the EX front wheel drive, because that was the long range version, or that's what we wanted to maximize the range on. So we had to reduce the mass on it as much as possible, rearrange features and things like that. Yeah, it was a big effort.
Did you do, in terms of materials used in the structure, did you do anything interesting, any kind of new materials, mixed materials, or is it kind of an evolution of what you've been doing over the years with your ACE architecture?
Yeah, I mean, we do have some hot stamp, things like that, but it's pretty traditional in the way. It's in the way, because we had to make sure it made it up with the Ultium structure, so we really try to kind of follow their lead on that.
So looking forward now, as Honda is developing its next generations of EVs, what are some of the lessons learned from this vehicle that you would like to see applied to future Honda EVs, or actually any Honda vehicle for that matter? I mean, I'm sure there's things that can be applied even on your internal combustion vehicles.
I mean, I really enjoyed working on a EV platform because there's so much flexibility, like in the where you can move the steering rack and have the wheels pushed out to the corners and pushed out. Those are kind of some interesting learnings that you have that opportunity and you should leverage it, to give the designers and the package engineers more freedom. But that was pretty liberating, how flexible and how
because the electric motors and the drive units are very compact, and you're less restricted in terms of where you need to put them compared to an engine.
So it does open up a lot of possibility for designers and packaging engineers. So it is pretty cool, and I hope we leverage that instead of making it more similar to something else, right? That you have that possibility.
Well, based on the Series 0 concepts that we saw at CES a couple of weeks ago, there's clearly a lot of potential for doing something interesting. And
everybody
unique.
wants to be creative and something different, so it's a perfect opportunity, and you have something that's literally just a skateboard, and you can really do something unique.
Yeah.
And then when you can do drive-by-wire or steer-by-wire, then.
So when do you expect to get your Prologue to be driving your family around in?
I already have one.
Okay.
That I'm driving every day, but yeah, soon.
Okay.
Soon I will have my own.
All right. Well, thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. And we're back. And let's see.
Sam.
What do we got next? We talked about the Ram, talked about the Prologue. Have either of you had a chance to try out the Ineos Grenadier yet?
No. It sounds like a drink.
It does sound like it should be a drink. So the Grenadier is this. The Ineos is a new was it British, I think, automaker that is building an off-road SUV that borrows a lot from a design perspective from the old Land Rover Defenders.
I love that look.
The classic.
I love it.
The classic Defenders, yeah. And the Grenadier, which launched late last year, and our friends at TFL actually just got one. They just bought one for a long-term test. Is fitted with a BMW 3-liter twin-turbo inline-six, lovely engine. Again, the best of all internal combustion configurations. And those guys are testing one right now. But this past week, Ineos announced the Fusilier, which is essentially an electric version of the
Which is kind of cool. It looks, I think that's a neat idea.
Yeah. No, it makes sense to do it.
I think it's a good move, and it looks fantastic. And yeah,
So they're working with Magna. So where are they? Is Magna? Are they going to source their motor from Magna? They're sourcing it from somebody else.
They might, because Magna is building motors. They have motors that they can offer. The Autoblog article says it's unclear if Magna will develop the Fusilier's powertrain options or if Ineos will get them from somewhere else. But I think I think Magna is actually going to be producing these vehicles, but it's unknown if they will provide the powertrain or not.
I'm interested to see how that plays. I'm very interested in seeing how the powertrain issue plays out, because building your own, especially for an automaker this small, that's sort of insane.
Yeah.
And there's options out there. You can Magna, every tier 1 OEM, tier 1 has some sort of electric motor. You can get it. You can do what Aston Martin's doing and get it from Lucid. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean the Fusilier is a little bit smaller than the Grenadier, but has some of that same kind of design flavor to it. Also has a lot of G-Wagon in it.
It looks very G-Wagon.
It's very G-Wagon. Yep.
Yeah. So this should be coming in like 2026, 2027 timeframe.
Cool.
It's still a little ways out.
Yep.
You got a little while. They got some time to figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of electric SUVs, on Friday afternoon, actually, no, it's Friday morning, I went out to Auburn Hills. And we had a round table with, why am I blanking on his name?
I forgot his name. I know it, and I don't. I wasn't there, but you sent it to us, so
yeah. Antonio Filosa. Antonio is the new global CEO of the Jeep brand, and he's been with Stellantis, FCA, Fiat for more than 20 years. Most recently was based at their operations in South America, and he's been brought in. He replaced Christian Munier, who was previously the CEO of the Jeep brand. So he's been on the job now running Jeep for about 3 months. And so we got a chance to have a roundtable with Antonio Filosa, learn some things about what they're changing at Jeep, and they're making a bunch of changes, responding to some of the falling sales that they've had the last couple of years, and also about where the brand is going in the future. We also got a chance to actually see the Wagoneer S and the Recon in person. These are Jeep's first 2 battery electric vehicles for North America. I liked them a lot. I was surprised when we walked into the room. This was a room in the design center. The 2 concepts were there, and they first showed these 2 back in 2022. But they've only released images. They've never had these vehicles at an auto show or anything at any point in the last 2 years. And so this was the first time I think any of us that were there had seen these things in person. And I was surprised when I walked in the room and looked at the Recon. It looks way bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Until you stand next to it and you start to look at the details. So the Recon is a sort of Wrangler / Bronco-esque off-roader, and they haven't released any specific specs on either of these vehicles yet. But the Recon is said to have, and it appears to be about roughly the same footprint as a Wrangler. So similar overall length, overall width, overall height as a Wrangler, but its proportions are quite different from a Wrangler. It does have removable doors like a Wrangler or a Bronco, hard top, but with a folding soft sunroof, moonroof thing, so you can get the wide open feeling, and I said the removable doors, but unlike the Wranglers, which have a fairly narrow body and then the wide fenders, which means you end up with kind of a compact feeling cabin and interior. It's relatively cramped for the size of the vehicle. This, the body comes out more towards the perimeter like a Bronco. And then again, because it's electric and there's no engine in the front, just the electric motor up there, they pushed the front bulkhead forward. So you've got a longer and wider passenger cabin. And I think the reason why it looked so much bigger when we walked in is because the front end, the hood and everything is so much wider because it comes out basically to the outer perimeter. So it's boxier looking than a Wrangler. And you don't have those wide, the narrow hood and the wide fenders. It's got a wide hood, but then when you look at it from the side, you realize how short the hood is. So very different proportions from a Wrangler. But very much intended to be an off-roader. And got good sized cargo area in the back. Both the front and second row seating looks much roomier than in a Wrangler.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Wagoneer S, which we also saw, looks much more kind of Grand Cherokee-esque. Doesn't really look like the big Wagoneers. And despite what they said when they first showed these a couple of years ago, when they talked about, they said, we're not, this probably won't be called the Wagoneer S. We're still looking at names for it. Now they've decided, yeah, we're just going to call it Wagoneer S. And so the Wagoneer S is actually a little bit smaller and a little bit lower than the Grand Cherokee, the current 2-row Grand Cherokee. So this is a 2-row SUV, very much an on-road vehicle. It's not an off-roader at all. It looks really good. I mean, it's very, very sleek, very sharp looking vehicle. Really nice upscale premium interior, fitting with the Wagoneer nameplate. And both of these vehicles are built on the Stella Large platform, which means that they will support up to 118 kilowatt hour battery pack. And the Wagoneer S will have 600 horsepower. And so there's going to be several Stella Large vehicles launching in the next 12 months, including the Wagoneer S, the Recon, the Dodge Charger, and the first of the electric Chryslers coming next year as well. So those are all on this Stella Large platform. The Wagoneer S, like I said, is going to be 2-motor, 600 horsepower. They're not saying which size battery, but presumably that 118 kilowatt hour battery, and well over 300 miles of range. And the Wagoneer S actually starts production in the second quarter. So sometime in the next 3 months starts production, goes on sale in the summer.
That's not far.
No. So just a few months from now. And then the Recon goes into production in Q4, will probably be on sale early in 2025. During the conversation, Filosa talked a lot about what's happening with the Jeep brand. They've recognized they've had some challenges, maybe made some mistakes, and they're working to correct those. Like for example, one of those mistakes was trying to create a separate sub-brand for Wagoneer.
Yeah, that was fascinating listening to that. The like, wait, we should just make this a Jeep conversation that seemed to happen.
Yeah, well, when we walked into the room and we saw the two vehicles sitting there, and we walked around the Wagoneer S, one of the first, and this was before the roundtable session started. One of the first things we noticed was, oh, it says Jeep on the tailgate, which the current big Wagoneers do not.
Does not.
The only places you'll find the word Jeep are inside the headlamp clusters and inside the taillight clusters. Everywhere else, it's missing. But going forward, they've abandoned that plan to try and create this Wagoneer sub brand, and they're just going to be Jeep Wagoneers going forward.
I'm curious as to what, and I don't know this because obviously this wasn't discussed in the meeting, or the roundtable that you were at. But I wonder what made them think taking it out and making it its own sub brand was the way to go to begin with. I wonder what the rationale for what, did you get that at all during the discussions?
He didn't
Like,
really get into that, but from what I've gathered previously from prior discussions, it's kind of, I think that they were trying there, obviously with the big Wagoneers, they were trying to go even more upmarket and compete, against like, the Grand Wagoneer was, the regular Wagoneer was kind of competing against, Ford, Chevy,
right.
GMC. The Grand Wagoneer was competing against Lincoln Navigator, Cadillac Escalade, and even, potentially, competing against the likes of Range Rover.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think they've decided that, that was maybe a step too far right now.
For Jeep
And
people.
just generally Jeep pricing, they recognize that they went too far in going up market with Jeep pricing.
They lowered, is I following all that right? They've lowered pricing on pretty much everything and not just like a couple $100s, some of those like thousands of dollars off the MSRP over the last few months.
Yeah. So Wrangler, the prices, the MSRPs have stayed the same, but they've added $3,000 worth of content. So you're effectively,
Okay.
getting options that were previously would have cost you an extra $3,000 at the same price.
Now they're just there.
All right. Gladiator, they've also added that $3,000 of content. Plus, they've dropped the MSRP by $1,700. Compass, they've dropped the base price of the Compass down to $25,900. So it's under 26 grand now for Compass. Grand Cherokee, they've cut the prices by $4,000.
Those are significant numbers.
Yeah. And and they're both adding equipment and cutting prices, recognizing that, it's just that we went too far on
It's
pricing.
not working. Yeah.
We went too far.
Yeah.
We went too far. We got crazy.
No, and it's
Well, and
it's good. It's good to hear them acknowledge that.
Well, there was a lot of conversation in there. It seemed like about, how much inflation has impacted the consumer in the US and that by, the initially having prices higher and having so much extra content being extra cost, it was hard for consumers in the US today. With what interest rates are doing, it's very hard to buy an expensive anything, whether it's a house or a car. So you do that, you're pricing people out if you ignore too much of that lower end of your segment. So by saying, well, we're just going to pull pricing down and increase the content, that's a good move. That's a really good move. And I would think that it would do well for the brand.
Yeah, it should help. Let's see, they're targeting, last year they were over 50% market share for plug-in hybrids in total.
Which is incredible to think of.
Yeah, I know for Jeep. They're two best-selling vehicles, the Wrangler and the Grand Cherokee, are both available as plug-in hybrids. So makes sense. And they're adding more starting next year, adding more plug-in hybrids, as well as adding the battery electric models. For the big Wagoneer, they are, in addition to officially making them Jeeps again, they're also simplifying the lineup. So, that was one of the things, in addition to cutting prices, they're also working to cut costs and improve quality. So they're doing, one of the things they're doing is usual simplification of the lineup, having fewer buildable combinations.
Well, and they do have, especially for like Wrangler, it's like buying a pickup truck. There are 8 million permutations and combinations you can do for those. So it's confusing. It's really confusing.
Very. So they're starting with the Wagoneers. They're simplifying that lineup. I asked Antonio, kind of what he sees as the competitors for the Wagoneer S. And he said, obviously, the biggest target is the Tesla Model Y, which I thought was interesting. Clearly, Model Y in terms of sheer unit volumes.
Isn't the Model Y small? The Wagoneer S is much bigger, or is my
it's a little bigger.
Okay. Or the Wagoneer in general, I haven't seen it.
It's a bit bigger than the Model Y, but the Model Y is kind of the benchmark in terms of sales and popularity right now. But the Wagoneer S is slightly bigger, but also going to be significantly more premium. So I think really, where they're competing, with this thing, is probably against the likes of the Lyric, some of the, Audis, Mercedes-Benz, those types of, the EQE, the Q8 e-tron. It'll be really interesting to see where they price this, because that's what I was trying to get at with the question was,
Did they give you any indication of pricing on this one yet?
No, but given what they're doing across the rest of the lineup, I think it makes sense that, they are going to try to be fairly aggressive on the pricing. I mean, it's not going to be cheap, but I would guess that it's probably going to be in the same, closer to the pricing of a Lyric than say the Q8 e-tron. That Q8 e-tron I had last week, was $96,000. And they start in the upper 70s.
That's high. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would guess they're probably going to try and get it, maybe starting price under 60 grand, and maxing out somewhere around low 70s.
That sounds fair.
Yeah.
And that sounds reasonable given where the brand has been. And if they're trying to alter that course a little bit, that sounds like fair pricing, Sam.
Yeah. And then in terms of volumes, I mean, they're targeting over 10,000 units next year for Wagoneer S. They haven't said what volumes they're targeting for the Recon. So some interesting things going on.
There's a lot of changes going on there, and I think that it has the potential to be good changes. It'll be interesting to see as everything, right now, some of it is like some of it's happened, some of it's happening. So it'll be interesting to see just even in 6 months where things stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometime next year we'll see a plug-in hybrid, 4xe version of the Gladiator, and we'll see. There's also, they're also planning to launch new and updated versions of other models as well. I think we'll probably see, refreshed versions of the Compass, and maybe even a new, something in the sort of the next class up, Cherokee class.
Because the Cherokee is gone, right? We have Grand Cherokee, but
it's out of production now.
And Renegade is gone, right?
Right. Renegade's gone from North America.
That's what I thought.
But we'll see something, I think, at least in the class above, something in between Compass and Grand Cherokee. What they call it, whether it'll be another Cherokee or they change the name to something else, I don't know.
People are very sad about the loss of Cherokee.
Yeah.
Just because it was a good size, it was not a huge seller. Yeah.
Which is why they discontinued it.
No, that makes sense then.
And its sales were declining for several years.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to watch what happens with Jeep, and then, another question that was asked, was, whether we'll see, a range extended EV in the Jeep lineup, like the Ramcharger, and the Ramcharger we talked about before, and you mentioned it earlier, is a range extended electric version of the Ram, which uses a Pentastar V6 that drives a generator, has no mechanical connection to the wheels. So all it's doing is it's driving the generator to recharge the battery. It would, given that the Wagoneer, the big Wagoneer, is based on the platform of the Ram, it's a body on frame. Filosa said, we haven't made any decisions yet. We're looking at it. But I would be shocked if they don't do essentially a Ramcharger version of the big Wagoneer in the next 3 years.
That would make sense. I agree. I would be surprised if they didn't do something. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on Jeep? Any other thoughts?
I feel like that covers the Jeep.
Jeep.
The
Kia EV9 will shortly be starting production in West Point, Georgia. Right now, they all come from Korea, which means that at least the first stage of it being eligible for full federal tax credits will be met, in that it'll be assembled in North America. But then, of course, there's still the problem of the battery content having to meet certain requirements. And according to a report from Autoblog, at least initially, it may not get the full $7,500 tax credit. The batteries for these things are supplied by SK On, which has actually has two plants in Georgia that also supply Ford and Volkswagen, and presumably will at some point will also be supplying Kia, at least for a time until the new battery plants that Hyundai is building right now that they have under construction come online. So it's possible that the EV9 might only be available or might only be eligible for $3,750. And it's not clear yet which, whether it's based on the components, the battery components, which is things like the battery casings and modules and so on, or the battery materials. I think it's apparently the battery packs will be supplied by Hyundai Mobis, which is another division of the larger Hyundai group. That's a parts supplier. And so the components may be coming from South Korea to start with. And then, so it may be eligible based on the critical minerals rather than the components, but they do want to get it eventually eligible for the full 7,500, but they don't know what the time frame for that will be.
Yeah. Or you can just lease it.
Yeah.
Too.
That'll work.
Or you just lease it.
Yeah. All right. And Waymo has had previously applied to the California Public Utilities Commission to expand their driverless robotaxi service to the entire San Francisco peninsula. So basically the whole area from San Francisco down to San Jose. But given what's been going on recently with Cruise and other stuff, the CPUC has put that application on hold until at least June. So Waymo will not be able to expand their service beyond the city limits of San Francisco for the time being.
I guess it's not really that surprising, though. Kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, finally, it feels like a CPUC is listening to the people who have to live with these vehicles and the towns that have to live with these vehicles, because they were just sort of, barreling over like San Francisco and the wants and needs of the people who live in San Francisco and be like, nah, we're just going to do it. And they were like, no, we would not like this to happen. They're like, we do what we want.
Stop complaining.
Stop complaining.
It's a bunch of whiners.
Cars blocking.
And then the last one before we hit some listener questions is GM bonuses. Typically this is about the time of year when, profit sharing bonuses are paid out, sometime in late February or into March. And apparently this year, GM decided that 40% and 40% of bonuses for salaried employees, because, generally the way these things work in corporate America is, part of the formula for how much you get paid for your bonus is based on overall corporate profitability, and then there's various other components like how much your particular division, how well your particular division did, and some of the other parts of the company. So this year, 40% of the bonuses for salaried employees will be calculated based on the performance of the EVs, software and services, and cruise divisions of General Motors, which have all just been going gangbusters this year.
If you're looking for your big bonus, wah.
Well, yeah, that's a tough thing to spring on people.
Yeah, I know.
Is it like did they just change this, Sam, or was this like hopefully people?
It's their 2024 bonus, so I'm guessing at the end of this year.
No, that's their bonuses that are going to be paid out this year, like in the next several weeks.
Oh man, that's that's rough. Because I mean, EVs is something you have to do. So I'm like, all right, fine. Software, something you have to do. Okay. Cruise.
Yikes.
Yeah, I mean, Cruise lost about $3.5 billion last year.
So everyone's bonus,
No
40% of their bonus is them paying GM some money.
Yeah, I mean, GM was hugely profitable last year.
Yeah.
So at least 60% of their bonus will be based on that. And then the other 40%, will be based on the performance of divisions of the company that have frankly done really poorly in the past year.
They sold a lot of Chevy Bolts.
Yeah.
So there you
Pretty
go.
much every one of those probably at a very significant loss.
No, every time they tell me that, I feel like if you're talking about overall, like, well, we've spent a lot of money in stuff, but I think as vehicles individually, they're making money on those cars.
I doubt it.
I don't.
I'm
60,000. No, it's the economies of scale. You're selling $60,000, over 60,000 vehicles. I feel like I think they're going to do the Batman. It's the Batman math.
Yeah.
They try to figure out how to make sure that Jack Nicholson didn't make any money off Batman. They're like, oh, I didn't really make any profit. And we're like,
But I think the losses on everything else, everything Ultium related, will probably more than offset anything they might have made on Bolt.
Yeah, that's true too.
And then with all on the software and services side, it's just such a mess there.
Yeah, sorry, GM. Employees.
Feel sorry for those people. Yep.
At least 60% of their money is coming.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they'll still get a very healthy bonus, just not as much as they might have hoped for.
Man, that Cruise hit,
The Cruise thing is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
They're like, I didn't even like self-driving cars. We're not getting the pool, just like the Griswolds.
Yeah.
You're not getting the pool.
Wow. All right. We got several listener questions this week. Let's answer those.
Okay.
First up, Rick from Utah. This is a fairly long one, so we'll go through it in parts. So
Rick, you are verbose. Okay, go ahead.
Long-time listener and Patreon member. Well, he's a Patreon member, so I will give him credit for that. So
okay.
You can be as verbose as you like.
Buy that McLaren.
I thought I'd report back and ask another question. You gave me and my wife some good recommendations about a new car purchase. I couldn't get my wife to go for the Kia EV6. She has range anxiety, and the infrastructure is lacking in Utah. But we went with a Sorento plug-in hybrid, the best of both worlds. Had it for 3 weeks, and we are loving it. But here's my question: how can we keep dealers honest?
Oh man.
Oh God.
Gee, I'm sorry, Rick.
Let's just end it there. We don't.
Yeah, let's ask. That was easy. You can. Next.
I purchased a Mach-E 2 years ago from Young Ford in Ogden, Utah. During my first visit, I was given a service report for a combustion engine and was told that I needed a drive belt and engine air filter for his Mach-E.
Oh my gosh.
I was not a happy camper. The only reason I went back was the complimentary service with my purchase. During my last visit, I was told that I needed to have my brake rotors turned. When I pressed further, I was told that they always recommend brake pads with that service. Long story short, I got a second opinion and was told that due to me using the one-pedal decel and regenerative braking, they looked practically new. How do I know when they are lying?
You don't.
Their lips are moving.
Yeah.
Says time is money. So yes, they were lying to you. You almost certainly, if you got a second opinion and they said your brakes are fine, you're fine. You don't need to have your
brake pads last so much longer because of regen. So your rotor should be pretty,
And even with internal combustion engine cars, I've never had to have brake rotors turned after just 2 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What do you do?
I mean, unless you are taking this thing to the track and over really severely overheating the brakes all the time, and you've warped them, you almost certainly don't. I mean, let me put it this way: if you can drive down the road and press down on the brake pedal and you don't feel any pulsing, without getting into ABS, if you don't feel any pulsing in the brake pedal, you don't need your rotors turned. The only time your rotors need to be turned is if you've warped the rotors. So I can, if your brake pedal is smooth, you don't need to get them turned.
You're fine.
It says during our recent purchasing of our new Sorento, okay, don't laugh too hard, at Young Kia in Layton, Utah. Hey, I actually like the Sorento, and I like the Sorento plug-in hybrid. It's a
I think he's talking about Young. because
Young.
it's the same. It's young
Yeah.
Ford and young Kia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, young
The
Ford,
same.
young
It's
Ford.
the same dealer network.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh yeah. Okay.
Young.
I hadn't caught that. We had this encounter. According to the Kia website, this was the only dealer in Utah to have any Sorento PHEVs in stock. Because my wife hates car shopping, she makes me go do the haggling. I asked what would be the best price that they could give me. I was given a quote. When I got home, something looked funny on the quote. The color of the car didn't match. Luckily, the VIN was on the quote. Thus, through some research, I found that the vehicle on the quote was sold last year, and it was last year's model. When I questioned the dealer, I was told it was a typo. I was then given a new quote that was about $5,000 more than the original quote because of different rebates and dealer accessories that were installed on the car. Those dealer accessories, yeah.
Every time.
I held them to the original price, but how many people would have just paid the extra or walked away? New cars are an investment and expensive. Dealers are few and far apart. Well, in most, at least in most urban areas, they're not that far apart. But maybe in Ogden, I'm not sure how many dealers you got around there. Anyway, this dealer is the nearest, but still 50 miles away. I can't go down the street to a different dealer, but it also seems like there is a monopoly on them. I know there have been many books written about the subject, but what else can be done? It's not the vehicles or the manufacturers, it's the dealers. Just wondering about your thoughts on this subject. Thank you all. Thanks for all you do. Keep it up.
And here's the sad part is a lot of people they conflate the dealer with the auto brand, with the brand. So
Yeah,
if they go
you
to
see
Ford
that
like,
brand on the sign,
Yeah.
Ford or General, Chevrolet or Kia or
I'll
Hyundai.
never buy another Ford again because this dealership did a thing. And you're like, well, it wasn't Ford who did this; it was the dealership.
I had an OEM once say that was one of her biggest frustrations. I was talking about something when I gone on with my car, and she's like, geez, they could have made that right for such a small expense. She's like, we hate to hear that because everyone thinks the brand is terrible. And it's just some dealer who didn't want to spend $200 to make it right. Or when the brand would have been like, here's $200, make it right for the customer. It's hard.
It's really tough, especially when with Rick's issue where sometimes you don't I'm just gonna say it again. I'm from a small town, and when we went to go to buy a car once, I had to about 45 minutes away to Lancaster to buy the car, and they kept telling me they didn't have a car that I wanted, and they kept telling me after hours and hours, they're finally like, oh, you know what, we do have a car that fits what you want. They were just trying to unload another vehicle on me, and I was just like, no, because I have a dead face when I deal with the dealers. I'm just like, no. We would like to tell you, I'm like, no. Well, it's already installed. I'm like, I don't care. Take it off.
Yeah.
I'm like, I will leave. I don't care. But it's difficult because you have all these people coming at you. They're throwing all these numbers. You have the finance person who comes in with crazy math that doesn't really make any sense.
We had a dealer that said to us, he literally put on one of the first car that I think we bought when we were married. They literally put on extended warranties that upped the cost of my car by like $150 a month. And I was like, why is this more than what I just talked to you about 30 seconds ago? Well, it's the warranties that I told you I didn't want any. And his actual response was, well, we've already done up the paperwork. And I was like, okay, well,
too bad.
Tear it up.
hey, do it
That's
again.
not my fault.
It doesn't. That paperwork doesn't have my signature on it.
Right. And
so
he's like sitting there like with the paper. Well, we already did the paperwork. I said, I
don't care.
Do the paperwork again. Sorry, get chopping. But like that's the kind of thing they do, and they've been doing it forever. And I don't see it changing because enough people would just say, fine, whatever, I don't care, or they just agree to it, or they don't catch it, and then it's too late because you bought the car. So they do it hoping that they'll kind of sneak one by you. And I don't think there's any way to. You can't make a dishonest person or a dishonest business honest. You just can't. They just have to choose to do that.
Yeah, You call them out and call them out, but at the end of the day, they don't really care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everyone's been calling out dealerships for years. I mean, there's markups.org, which calls out all the markups that the insane markups that dealers are doing, and it's still. I mean, you as a consumer, try to maybe be willing to travel a little bit to get the vehicle that you want. Unless you're Rick, who already has to travel just to get the vehicles they want. And just hold steady. That's the thing. You really just gotta hold steady. Like, you know what? I'm, like Rick did. And then this is why people were like, well, I'm just gonna, I had a friend who was in an accident with a Prius that he had forever. He was gonna drive this Prius into the ground. Someone ran into him. He's like, oh, I had to go buy a car, and he just didn't want to deal with dealerships, so he just went out and got he literally went out and bought a Tesla because of that. Because he didn't have to deal. It's just like, what's it cost? This much? All right, fine, and that's it. That's all. There's no one's coming up to you like, oh, by the way, let me.
until the next week, you saw the news report that they just dropped the price of
They
that
dropped the
Tesla
price, yeah.
by $10,000.
Right.
But
$10,000. Yeah, so there's that. So maybe we just don't buy cars anymore. How about that?
yeah, I mean,
Go get a horse.
We're all getting bicycles.
It's a tough situation, for Rick, because he's got to drive, 50 miles anyway to get to this Kia dealer. And, for, the domestic brands, GM, Ford, Stellantis, they have a lot more dealers typically than any of the foreign brand vehicles. And so it's generally a lot easier to find alternate dealers. Although, when you're, in a place like Utah, for example, or a lot of Western states, where, in a particular city, there might be a dealer there, but there tend to be, longer distances between cities where there's not a lot of car dealers there. Here, in most other urban areas, you've usually got a choice of more dealers. And so you have that option to go to a different dealer. Unfortunately, that's not the case for Rick, and I'm not sure, other than telling him, to buy, if there isn't another dealer for the brand you want, to go to another brand, that's obviously not viable anymore because you already bought the Sorento. But if you're in other areas, then, at least when it comes to service, you can, like, you buy a Ford or even you buy a Kia, you don't have to go to the dealer you bought it from. You can go to any Kia dealer.
Right.
And so if there are other dealers within a reasonable distance of you, if you don't like the way your dealer is servicing, and especially for warranty stuff, you don't have to take it to the dealer. You absolutely don't have to take it to the dealer you bought it from. You can take it to any dealer because, they're going to do the warranty work and they're just going to bill the manufacturer for that. So you can take it literally take it anywhere you want, and they will perform the service. And if you can find a dealer that provides better service, take your vehicle there. And then the next time you're ready to buy something, think about, going to that dealer, if you like the service you got from that dealer, like, if you can find a Ford dealer that doesn't insist on turning the brake rotors on your Mach-E, then next time you're ready to buy one, go to that dealer instead, take your business elsewhere. If you can. Obviously that's not always a viable option, but if you can, that's really the only option that we have. That and write to us and let us help shame these dealers like young Kia and young Ford. So, all right. Next up, Neil from Ohio. This is a somewhat shorter email. Says, do you really need an electrically operated parking brake when we have a parking pall? Should I just disable it? So for those not familiar, in an automatic transmission, there is a special separate gear with very large teeth. And there's a little thing when you put your car in park, there's basically a little lever that gets activated, and it goes into those very large teeth. That gear is called the parking pall, and that's what when you put it in park, that's what keeps the car from rolling back and forth, and it basically locks it in place. And on most all automatic vehicles have a parking pall. Not all electric vehicles have a parking pall though. And on modern vehicles, we also have electric parking brakes, electrically activated parking brakes. You really can't disable that. It's activated through using the ABS or stability control hydraulic unit. So when you hit the switch for the electric parking brake, it basically it pressurizes the rear brake line and then closes a valve that is closed when you de-energize it. So it just holds the pressure in there. So it's not like the old days with the cable that was activated by the lever. or foot pedal. So you really can't deactivate it. And also, it's required by law, by Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 105, requires a parking brake that can hold the vehicle on a 30% grade for 5 minutes. So that's why
it's still better because the Paul, your car rocks back and forth. Just that's a quick thing you just want to point out.
Okay. Is that Nicole? Do you need to jump?
I need to jump, guys. So I will see you all next week. Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. 2 more. Adam Jackowenko asked, hey, team, would love if Robbie could check out, if he hasn't already, and review the new indoor Electrify America station on the podcast at some point. Seems like a great idea.
Well, fun fact, I'm actually supposed to write this up for Ars Technica, and I was going to try to go there today or tomorrow. So that's my, it's already on the docket for me to run and try this place out in San Francisco. It's an excuse to go into the city and get burritos, and of course also.
Oh, can you grab me one too?
Yeah, everyone gets a burrito. Everyone, if you want a burrito, put your order in now.
Okay. I will take steak. All right. Finally, Ed asks, thank you for providing excellent insight about large tire sizes affecting range on vehicles. What is the law of diminishing returns on tire size? Can someone put even smaller tires and rims than stock on any car and get more range? Are there tires that are more efficient and extra quiet to specifically absorb sound? Is there a way to making an ICE engine very quiet from an engineering standpoint of view? And I have a Kia Niro PHEV, and the ICE engine sounds loud and grumbly at low speeds. Wish I could mute it significantly. So first up, going to smaller wheels and tires is not beyond a certain point is not necessarily going to give you more range. Those wheels and tires will be lighter, will have less rotational inertia, but as you go to smaller wheels and tires, they're also going to be rotating faster for a given speed. And so, one of the things you'll notice on most vehicles is that regardless of the wheel and tire size, they follow this kind of +1, +2 philosophy where they make the wheels bigger, but then the tires get smaller sidewalls, smaller aspect ratio for the sidewalls. So you maintain roughly similar rotating diameter of the wheel and tire. And as you go to bigger and bigger wheels, those things get heavier, and you're putting more of that weight concentrated at the outer perimeter of the wheel and tire. And so that's what's hurting your range. But going to a smaller diameter wheel and tire means that the wheel's going to have to rotate faster. So your motor's going to be spinning faster. So you're probably not going to gain any range. Going to a smaller wheel with a taller sidewall tire, that is where it may help. And also a little bit narrower tire, a little bit less rolling resistance, a little bit less air drag. So that's where that's going to help. And then tires that are efficient and extra quiet. Tire makers are working on making quieter and quieter tires. Some like Michelin, for example, and I think Bridgestone also has some tires that actually have a strip of foam inside the tread on the inside of the tire to help absorb noise, and especially some of that rumbling sound, that low frequency rumble you get from the roads. It helps break up some of those sound waves inside the tire and reduces tire noise.
They also changed the
tread pattern.
The tread pattern, because if the pattern is exactly the same, you end up with this like a tone. So if you change it up, it disrupts that tone. It's pretty, like, tire technology is pretty crazy. And yeah, they especially for the EVs, because there's no engine noise, suddenly the tires sound a lot louder. So they put foam in them and make them more efficient.
And then any way of making an ICE engine very quiet. There's, engineers are always looking at how to reduce the noise, vibration, and harshness, and there's a lot of things that cause noises, everything from like the design of the block and the head, the castings, and when you look at an engine, you'll see all kinds of assorted ribs in various places on the castings. Some of that is for strength, to give it strength in certain places where it needs it, to keep it from twisting and cracking. But some of it is also for noise, to dampen vibrations that happen. And so from a consumer perspective, there's probably not anything you can really do.
Get a better car stereo.
Yeah.
Just get a
more powerful
or you
stereo.
could just you do like subframes, like high-end luxury vehicles. Well, the engines would be on subframes that reduce sound. But for like us, for regular folks, once we have the car, just get a really nice stereo, some good speakers, just
yeah. Get some, put in some noise canceling earbuds.
Yeah.
And the Nero, the engine, it's that's a relatively low end engine, and it's also designed for efficiency, so it's probably idles at lower speeds than some other engines. Thought the Nero plug-in had active noise cancellation, but maybe it doesn't. There's probably not a whole lot you can do.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. And that's it for this week. We will see you all or talk to you all next week. Bye.
Goodbye.